With just 3 races left in the Grand American Rolex Sports Car Series, it is simply time to win. In the sports racing prototype class, rookie Chris Dyson needs to win to keep chipping away at veteran Didier Tay's points lead. In SRP2, Rand Racing's Terry Borchler has a firm grasp on the title. But this is literally G&W Motorsports' backyard. They would love a breakthrough win, and there's nothing sweeter than an upset win in front of the hometown crowd. Kerry Hitt is holding down the points lead in AGT, but a second win for the Morgan Dollar team would go a long way towards closing up that points battle. And the GT Championship is a classic. 5 points separate 4 drivers. If you're going to win that championship, you absolutely must win today. For the first time in 26 years, professional sports cars take on the rejuvenated and very fast Virginia International Raceway. And it's all about winning today on the world's fastest network, Speed. Virginia International Raceway. In the late 50s and 60s, this track boasted some of the biggest events and greatest names in road racing. But it closed down in 1974, basically reverting to farmland. But then in 2000, longtime sports car racer Harvey Siegel and partner Connie Lee Nyholm purchased it. And in just 2 short years, this great track has truly been reborn, transformed into a first-class racing facility. Hi everybody, and welcome to VIR for the first professional sports car race here in over 28 years. I'm Greg Creamer, happy to be joined once again by Jeremy Dale. Guy Hobbs and Sandy Heng will be covering the action again in the pits for us. And Jeremy, as we went off air at our last race at the fast and familiar Watkins Glen, we talked about the next 2 races for this championship run essentially brand new circuits. And you said then, VIR is not only beautiful, it's fast, and it's so historic.
Well, it is very historic, Greg. As you said, not since 1974 has there been a professional sports car race here, and they've done just a phenomenal job to bring it back to life. And most importantly, it has maintained its spirit, and the tree we're standing under right now is certainly proof of that. But the great thing also is that the drivers just love it. It's more than 3 miles around. It has a lot of elevation change. It is very, very quick, very, very challenging, and I think it's going to produce great racing.
The story of the return to this great track is certainly a great one, but unfortunately, Jeremy, perhaps an even more compelling story here is the weather. Since we've arrived, they've been measuring rainfall in the amounts of inches, and you get off the track here, it is an absolute mess. And we saw in some Grand Am Cup racing yesterday, there's an extra motivation to stay on the pavement.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Rolex teams have not had a normal dry session yet, and that affected qualifying, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the fact is, it's the same for everyone, and to finish and win the race, you've got to stay on the racetrack, and that will be one of the challenges here today.
You mentioned how it affected qualifying, and matter of fact, the sports racing prototype divisions never even completed a session. They're going to be gridded based on points. Now, speaking of points, with only 3 races to go, each event takes on so much more significance in the championship chase. Let's right now take a look at the point scenario in the 4 classes that are racing here today. First of all, Jeremy, in sports racing prototype, it's an interesting battle. Didier Tay's opened up a big lead early in the year, but young rookie Chris Dyson, with some help from James Weaver, his co-driver, has closed it up. But another big surprise, Weaver's not even here.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Dyson team is not here. Chris Dyson is running with the Crawford team, and Andy Wallace will be his teammate this weekend, and they're going to have to chase down the Doran guys, Tays, to get this championship away from them. But the Doran team has brought in Mauro Baldi for the weekend, and the combination of Baldi and Tays will be very, very difficult to beat.
Well, we mentioned it's an interesting-looking grid, but still near the front of it is Guy Hobbs, and he's found our 2 leading points protagonists. Guy?
With 3 races remaining in the Grand Am Series, we come to Virginia International Raceway for the first time ever for this series. It's a virgin track, we're in Virginia, but we don't have virgin drivers. Didier Tays is a points leader currently by 9 points over Chris Dyson right now. Didier, coming here to Virginia for the first time, how's it feel?
Well, it's a beautiful racetrack, you know, like they were building in the old days, up the hill, down the hill, left, right, you know, long track, actually, you know, 1 minute to almost 40 seconds. I really enjoy it, except the weather, but it looks like it will be dry for the race.
Now this weekend you've brought in Mauro Baldi to help you out in your Dallara Judd. Is that going to be another hot shoe there?
Oh, probably yes, definitely. You know, the Lienhardt family couldn't make it this weekend, and the father is busy in Czech Republic for business, and the son is at school, which is Mauro helped me this weekend, and Mauro knows the car. He's been in that car quite a few times now, and yeah, I think we have a good driver lineup.
All right, in a good points battle going on between yourself and Chris Dyson. Chris just trailing by 9. But this weekend, you brought in a new car, the Crawford, also with the Judd Power, but also a new teammate this weekend.
Well, we ran the Crawford Judd a little earlier in the year at Homestead in Fontana. Max has run it himself at Daytona 24 Hours and at the Paul Revere. And, you know, of course, Andy Wallace is a superb driver. He's worked with our team quite a bit over the years. And, you know, I've never worked with him. I wanted to. Max wanted some feedback on his car, and here we are.
Now, you've had James as a mentor. Andy working out the same way for you?
Well, I think they're kind of partners in crime, quite honestly. And, you know, just one wild Englishman after the next, I suppose.
Now, is there still any disappointment from the Watkins Glen round where you ended up second and you were hoping maybe your dad may let you through?
Well, you just got to move on. You know, I mean, you can't expect to be handed things on a plate, and you know, that was how that outcome probably would have looked if we had done that. You know, I think that you know, we're just going to pick up the pieces here, and have a go.
All right, good luck to both of you today. The finale may decide it in Daytona at the end of the season, but they're going to try and battle up this championship right here at Virginia today.
Thanks, Guy. I like that. One crazy Englishman after another. Boy, they do drive like that.
You talking about Guy?
Yeah, exactly. There's three of them to talk about. Let's talk about the points in Sports Racing Prototype 2. Terry Borchler really has a lock on this one. Darren Law has been very consistent in his finishes, but hasn't been able to get the wins. Teammate Anthony Lazaro matched Borchler, but of course missed a few races, and so it's all Borchlers at this stage. Let's take a look now at the American GT category, where it's a bit closer. Kerry Hitt has a 20-point margin right now over Andy Richards. Doug Goad no longer running in the championship, but Rob Morgan, who is a co-driver on occasion with Andy Richards, not too far off either, and that could become very interesting here depending upon who has a strong run. But it's in GT, Jeremy, where we have an incredibly close battle. 4 drivers covered by 5 points, 2 ties.
Well, Barboza, you see him tied for third with Kevin Buckler. He drives the Mosler, and when it has been reliable, it has been fast and almost unbeatable. Buckler, of course, in the 911 Porsche, and he has been very strong. But the guys that have had the momentum of late have been Oberlin and Wagner in that Ferrari 360 GT. They've won 3 straight races, going for their 4th straight here at VIR, and clearly they have the momentum right now.
They have the momentum. Let's check in right now, as earlier Sandy Hang visited with the contenders.
There is a fierce battle brewing in the GT class with 3 distinctly different cars, the Porsche, the Mosler, and the Ferrari. And just 5 points separate the top 4 drivers. Bill Oberlin and Court Wagner on top with the Ferrari. The pressure's got to be incredible at this point.
We've been here before. Court's won championships. I've won them. We're going to keep it clean, keep it smart. We're going to keep on it as hard as we can. We got great backers. Ferrari of Washington preparing a perfect car. Gerard Perregaux is keeping the time here. And it's up to Court to start, and I'll finish.
Court, any competition between you two? You're tied in points.
You know, normally there really is, but in this year it's been great. We've been sharing driving styles, sharing setups. We get along really, really well, and we actually drive the cars very similar. So the setups, we agree with everything, and it's just we want to win the championship together.
Right behind these guys is Joao Barbosa with the Mosler. They've won this season, and now they were the fastest in qualifying this morning in practice sessions, I should say. You got a good car?
Yeah, the Mosler, it's a great car. It's been driving really well. Unfortunately, we had really bad luck in the last couple of races, but looking forward for this race. The car is running really good. Team Perspective Racing has done an awesome job, and we're ready for the fight.
Again, the Mosler fastest in this last practice session before the race, and then Kevin Buckler in the Porsche. The 24 Hours of Le Mans, the 24 Hours of Daytona, you won those. How do you keep that momentum going for the end of the season?
Well, you know, the Porsche's reliability has been its strong suit all along. Because of the rules, we're getting kind of outgunned by these 2 cars that are now getting more and more reliable. They're real fast. You know, we're going to take it to them today. My co-driver, Michael's been the greatest thing that's happened to us. We've had few, if any, mistakes all year, so we're hoping we can keep it up today and try to win this race.
Again, the Porsche, the Mosler, and the Ferrari all battling out in the GT class today.
And as you heard from everybody we've talked to, the word win has been mentioned in each case. It is just that crucial to win a championship, to win here today at Virginia International Raceway. We'll be right back. Today's Speed Channel coverage of the Rolex Sports Car Championship is being brought to you by Porsche, what only a Porsche brings to driving. And by BMW, the ultimate driving machine. In August 1956, Ed Welch announced construction would begin on a new racetrack on the Virginia-North Carolina border. The surprise was it would be a sports car course right in the heart of stock car country. Once the track layout was determined, road graders Horace and Harry Strickland were enlisted. In fact, their grader's tightest turning radius remains the radius of the famous Oak Tree Turn. Before paving could begin, however, funds ran low, but New York enthusiast Ed Kim moved to the area, bringing the capital needed to finish the project. So on August 4th, almost 1 year to the day after that brazen announcement, 10,000 spectators watched now legendary Carroll Shelby's Maserati 450S fend off the Briggs Cunningham D-Type Jags of Walt Hangsken and Charlie Wallace to win the inaugural weekend's feature at an average speed of 78 miles per hour. And welcome back to Virginia International Raceway, everybody. The story of the creation of this facility, just a wonderful one, no question about it. And as a matter of fact, as they went out and drove around on the track, that road grader we talked about making the actual radius for the oak tree. But Horseshoe Bend, the first turn here, the actual turning radius at the tightest point of that turn matches the 300 SL Mercedes that fellow board member Dick Snyder owned at the time was driving around. So that's how they really laid this track out.
That is old-time racetrack design is what that is. But I'll tell you what, you couldn't design a racetrack today with more character and more challenging layout than VIR, and they've really maintained the character of this racetrack. Just phenomenal.
Let's take a look at the track and have you see it right there, just north of North Carolina in the Virginia area.
Over 3 miles and a great deal of elevation change, especially starting at turn 7 on the climb up through the climbing S's there. Very, very quick before you plunge downhill at turn 10 and into 12, which is where the oak tree is, that very tight radius. Then the long, long straightaway on the run up to turn 14, and then it plunges deeply downhill at 15, the roller coaster section. And just a phenomenal layout, a couple of good passing areas, turn 1, and of course, up into the roller coaster.
And this look right here is those climbing S's, and that is just an amazing piece of, actually that's the snake as you exit out of the double left hook underneath the bridge and then into the climbing S's, and then way up in the distance behind those trees is the oak tree turn, and it is just a phenomenal facility. And there is that turn and the oak tree that for so many years has sort of been the landmark at this facility.
Well, as a matter of fact, the apex of that corner only about 8 or 10 feet from the base of the tree. And literally, when you drive through there, the race cars run right under the tree. It really is a very unique and special part of the racetrack.
They say the only problem with that, actually, is that in the fall, when the leaves start to come off the tree, it makes some interesting cleanup in the morning. This is the roller coaster.
And this is very, very steeply downhill. You can see the tremendous amount of elevation change there. And really, coming down that hill, it feels like the car is falling off the edge of the earth. And the car very much on tiptoes coming down the hill before you come into the final turn there, which is in the foreground, which leads out onto the front straightaway.
You know, just touching on that construction one more time, when they were still in the dirt, they hadn't paved it yet, they got a very bad rainy spell, and they went out with graders, looked at all the drainage problems and fixed it. And just that last turn onto the front straight in the Grand Am Cup racing we saw yesterday, that was the one area where there was maybe a little bit of a problem. The drainage here is phenomenal.
Well, the racetrack is hardly ever flat, so it's hard for water to actually pool anywhere. So it's one of the bonuses that comes along with, you know, it's not exactly Sebring, Florida.
Not at all. Let's take a look at our starting lineup. And again, the starting lineup for the 2 sports racing prototype divisions based on points, and it's regardless of division. The most points has been accrued by the Rand Racing Nissan Lola of number 8. So Terry Borchler in the SRP2 division starts on the overall pole position with points leader in the SRP class, Didier Tays, the Judd Dallara, starting alongside. We take a look at row 2. There you're going to see Andy Wallace in for James Weaver, partnering in the Judd Crawford with young Chris Dyson. And then the number 70 SRP2, the Picchio, Darren Law, the driver, will start. They're second in that class points. Then in row 3, we go back to Ralph Kellners, who will be starting in the number 17 Nissan Lola from Rand Racing. And the Ford Norma, excuse me, in the SRP division, Patrice Roussel will be the starting driver in that machine. Row 4, Oliver Kuttner. Now, this is the Lola Porsche that Dorsey Schrader and Andy Wallace ran a couple of years ago. It's been brought back and refitted. And then in the SRP Nissan Pilbeam, very familiar face to race fans, Elliott Forbes Robinson, EFR. In row 5 now, the GT divisions that are racing here actually did get qualifying in, so this is based on time. And Spencer Pumpelly and the Zip Racing Porsche doing a great job to be able to come through and take pole. He'll be joined by João Barbosa driving the Mosler here. That'll be the outside of row 5. Row 6, Court Wagner, one of the 2 points leaders in the Ferrari 360 GT, of course. He's leading in the points and is tied with his teammate Bill Oberlin. And Cass Whitehead, another good run for the Porsche GT3R. In row 7, it'll be Cor Oizer in the Marcos Mantis. This key team is coming on just a little bit. They've teamed up with Fliss Motorsports, and these cars are starting to come alive. And Kevin Buckler, who's one of the 4 drivers in that great points battle in GT in the Porsche GT3R. In row 8, Jack Willis, late in qualifying, threw in a great lap. in Dick Greer's Wendy's Corvette to snatch the AGT pole away from Andy Richards, who's driving the Morgan Dollar vet, who had that pole late in the going. Then we look at row 9, and it's Corey Friedman in one of the BMW M3s that are entered here today. And next to him, AGT point leader in the Chevy Corvette, Kerry Hitt. And then in row 10, it is the Porsche GT3R of Christine Perot, who's teamed, by the way, with John Morton and Tommy Riggins in the American GT Ford Mustang. And let's head down before we get underway with racing and check in with Guy Hobbs. Guy?
Well, you mentioned that pole for the number 82 of Jack Wiles. It's all gone to naught because they inadvertently turned the fuel pump switch off on the warm-up lap. So they had to come back into the pit lane. They didn't make the grid in time, so they're starting from pit lane.
Boy, frustrating, but at least the upside to that, Jeremy, is we've got 500 miles of racing scheduled, and qualifying here is not maybe as huge as it could be.
No, grid position is not too critical when you're talking about a 500-mile race. There will be plenty of opportunity to make up the time because the key here is not making mistakes today, not losing time in the pits, keeping the car on the racetrack. Right now, the racetrack is dry, but boy, it's been awfully wet throughout most of the weekend, and I can tell you that grass is wet right now. And if you get off the racetrack, you can see a couple of wet patches there. If you get off that racetrack, you're going for a ride, and you're probably going to get into the barrier.
Yeah, there's lots of runoff here, but as wet as this grass is, there's not much gravel or rough pavement in the runoff areas. You're going to use all that runoff. One thing they have done is they've put tire barriers a ways out from the concrete barriers and guardrail, which has proven to be a pretty effective way of helping scrub off some speed, if you will. We'll have the BMW running order running across the top of the screen for much of the race, and some other information for you to follow as well. Lights are out on the pace car, and we're heading down. Now, Guy Hobbs told us right before the race that there was a lot of discussion between Andy Wallace and Terry Borchler about how Andy would like Terry to act, noting that Andy's got a lot more power in that car that's coming up behind him.
Well, I think what Andy probably wants Terry to do is to leave room for Andy to squeeze by on Terry's right. But that's going to mean Terry's going to have to be in the middle of the racetrack and potentially even squeezing Didier Taze to the outside.
Get out the way is what he's talking about. Pace car's in. We are ready to go here with the first professional sports car race at this historic track in almost 30 years. And watch for it. Green flag. We are underway. Boy, Didier Taze rolled into it very, very aggressively. And here comes Wallace. And Borchler doing just what he wanted. Now, Wallace thinking about it. And Taze covered going into the horseshoe. Ooh, big wiggle there from Taze. And Wallace is going to, not quite. And now they head into the double left hook section. This long arcing left-hander kind of goes on forever. Almost a speedway type turn. And then a snug, much more snug left-hander right here. The exit of which leads him into the snake, that first set of S's.
Keep in mind that these guys have done very little dry weather running on this racetrack, and it rained all day yesterday. There were 2 Grand Am Cup races, so there's absolutely no rubber down on this racetrack. So what little dry running they've done is really not very irrelevant.
There are the climbing S's that we were talking about, the exit of which is this left-hander. And then it drops really significantly right here, doesn't it, up into the Oak Tree turn.
That uphill braking zone there, you kind of diagonally shoot that braking zone across there. And then under the Oak Tree, very slow corner, out onto this very long back straightaway. Exit speed critical.
Well, let's point out here, these are both Judd-powered cars, but the car in front of Didier Taze, the 5-liter Judd that has been sort of a new development for that program. The car giving chase right now, I believe, is the old 4-liter.
Now, a very hard braking zone here into the roller coaster. Now, steeply downhill from that right-hand apex. Levels out a little bit, then again, very steeply downhill, all the way down this hill. Tap the brakes a little bit, and then get the power and try and get a run onto the front straightaway.
And that quickly, you've completed a lap here at VIR, and it begs noting, I think, that the track record prior to this being revisited now in the current era, the track record was set by John Gunn in a Formula 5000 Lola Chevy, a 2-minute 6.3, and the first race lap turned from that rolling start at 145 flat. So things have changed a bit.
Well, no question about it. As a matter of fact, when these guys ran on Friday in the dry a little bit, they were approaching an average speed of 120 miles an hour.
This is our SRP2 battle right here. And keep in mind, Terry Borchler driving the number 8. Comfortable lead in the points right now, he and Anthony Lazzaro in that car, and then a great driving lineup as well in the 7 car, joining the normal group here. We've seen Marino Franchitti do a number of drives in this car, usually partnering Nick Dodge, and they've also brought in Ralph Kellners, who was very quick in that car.
These are the climbing S's, very, very quick, almost flat out. Actually, it is flat out in these cars with the right amount of grip and the right amount of tire temperature. But it's very interesting. You climb up and then it'll plateau, and you climb again and it plateaus, and it just keeps on going on and on under the oak tree.
Rolling into the throttle, and you can see a lot of dirt and debris from previous action right there on the edge of the track. They did a lot of cleanup during the breaks here to try and get this track ready for racing, but as we've talked about, don't go off where you're going to go for a long slide. Borchardt continues to hold on in the SRB2 division here, and what a season they've had, just win after win after win for both of the cars, essentially. Some strong racing, but Borchardt, the acknowledged team leader, he's the one going for the championship, but there is Didier Taze leading overall early on here at VIR. Welcome back to Virginia International Raceway. Didier Taze has now opened up his margin just a little bit over Andy Wallace as he heads up into the Oak Tree turn. Wallace has dropped back just a bit here in the early going, and Taze looks very strong. We mentioned earlier that he's got Mauro Baldi joining him here. That's a great driver lineup. Back in GT, which could very well produce some of the best racing we're going to see today. Ooh, big wiggle there by the Lola Porsche in the SRP division. That now is João Barbosa, the Portuguese driver, who was running that Mosler, and he has gone around the pole sitter. That's the Zip Pompelli Porsche right there, number 34, in the hands of Ivan Ivankovic, I believe, and he now has slotted back into the second spot. We had speculated all along that on a dry track, the way that Mosler runs, that could be a very quick package here. And they too have brought in another driver to partner Barbosa, who is very quick, in Michel Newgarden. So that's going to be a great tandem in this GT class.
That's true, but it is a long race, 500 miles, and you've, you know, this actually, one of the things that they didn't do with this racetrack when they rebuilt it, they didn't add a lot of width to it. So it is a fairly narrow racetrack, which means passing is not always as easy as you want. There's the Ferrari winner of the last 3 races, Oberlin and Kurt Wagner. They run 3rd in class right now, only about 4 seconds behind the class leader. So the racetrack is not as wide as some of the racetracks these guys normally run on, for instance, Watkins Glen, where they just were a couple of weeks ago. So that really affects what you do in traffic and getting around the slower cars, and that will be a big challenge all day.
By the way, the Ferrari running right where it qualified in that 3rd spot. Then it's Cass Whitehead, and now moving up a spot into 5th in class is the Buckler Racers Group number 66 Porsche. There's the Ferrari, there's Whitehead, and now there's the Racers Group machine, and it is closed up noticeably now on Whitehead, and it's going to be perhaps taking a bit of a run to move into the top 4. You mentioned the narrowness of the track, and as fast as this track is, the drivers say there's an awful lot of it. That's the bob and weave, the S's and the like, so there's not a lot of straight area where you can actually effectively make a pass. You got to get a bit creative unless you use down into 1 perhaps, or down in the Oak Tree.
Well, there's definitely some places to pass if you're passing a car that's in a different class. You know, certainly the SRP cars will find a way to get around these guys. But you see this, through this section here, there's no way if an SRP car is behind one of these cars as they approach one of these connected sections, for instance, up here coming up the hill through the S's, very hard to pass through this section. So you're going to get caught behind one of these GT cars as you go up this hill until you get up here to the top of the hill where you might be able to dart through before that apex and plunging down the hill. This little brake zone here, as the cars transition back to the left, you can see all the skid marks going up on the inside there. That is a good place to potentially put a lap on a slower car, but tough to make a competitive pass in there.
Boy, Buckler hounding Whitehead here in this battle for 4th in the GT category. Really putting some pressure on the early going. Moves over a little bit and looks. That's another thing too with this track, the way it moves around a little bit. Is it right now real one line? You talked about all the rain having eliminated some of the rubber on the track, but if it's one line and you try and move out of the way, it could be interesting. Here now is the number 46. This is the car having a strong run right now in AGT. That's Andy Richards has moved up, and Tommy Riggins, they had a qualifying, we're well off the pace, and Riggins has just exploded in these opening couple of laps, moved into 2nd, and is really hounding Richards for the lead.
Well, of course, anyone that's been following road racing for roughly the last 20 years would know who Tommy Riggins is, and Tommy has got a nice run onto the main straightaway.
Oh, he squared that up beautifully. He got a good drive, and Riggins now moves into the lead in AGT. Richards slips into 2nd. And by the way, Jack Willis their problems in pit lane, still struggling a little bit. That car that Dick Greer's Wendy's bet is not up to speed yet. Well, we've seen Tommy Riggins. I mean, the first time they brought this car out, he in the first practice session was quickest. They've been a bit snake bit at certain times with some mechanical problems, but when this car runs, particularly when Riggins is driving it, it's arguably the quickest car in the class.
They had some early gremlins, but the car is very nicely prepared. Tommy's got an awful lot of experience, especially with these V8 front engine tube frame cars, and Tommy does a great job.
One of the surprises with the car running in second right now, the Morgan Dollar Motorsports vet, the two Richards, Andrew and Stephen out of Auckland, New Zealand, are joined for this race by Darius Graglia out of Weston, Massachusetts. Not the normal driver of the third car, Rob Morgan. And here we go. This is a good battle right now. This is for second in GT. Spencer Pumpelly, the number 34 Porsche, is being hounded and pursued big time now by Court Wagner. And boy, there's an indication they're getting down the straight pretty strong right now. There's your leader in GT, the Mosler, just going out of frame, and Pumpelly hangs on in second. Like to remind everybody to check in with the NASCAR edition of Speed Channel's Speed News coming up tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. NASCAR edition followed immediately at 7:30 by Speed News Sunday. That's coming up tonight now at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time right here in Speed Channel. Find out about all the racing action that's unfolded both in NASCAR and in other motorsports over the course of the weekend. Boy, we got a strong battle right here. This is for second in GT, and Spencer Pumpelly hanging on as Court Wagner closes in, and it looks like the Porsche has the legs a little bit on the straights. But boy, once they get in the braking zones and in the corners, Wagner starts to close it up just a little bit, Jeremy.
Well, keep in mind, again, these guys have had very little dry running time on this racetrack, so I think there's a lot. Hey, Court taking a look in turn one, side by side. Where did that come from?
Boy, he came from Raleigh-Durham to stick his nose in there, and Pumpelly let him do it. And now Court working the outside, then cuts to the inside here. But Spencer able to cover at this stage, and Court drops back just a little bit to prepare for another attack. Let's check in quickly with Guy Hobbs. All right, apparently a technical problem with Guy right there, so we'll stay with this battle at this point, because you've got to believe, Jeremy, that Wagner is going to take a run. Let's try again to get to Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, a very noisy car went by me. It wasn't the Crawford went by, but as he went by, the crew just up to the pit wall, and they look like they're getting prepared to make a stop. Also, just to update you on the ATC, the car number 82, Jack Willis, that has gone back behind the wall. It turns out it was more, the fuel problem they had is more serious than they thought, so they put that back behind the wall.
Well, that's a shame, especially Willis throwing in that brilliant lap late in qualifying to snatch pole, and then they end up now behind the wall early in the going. Nothing more frustrating than that. So they look to be done, at least for the time being. Meanwhile, we go back to this battle for second here, and that's what I was talking about. You can see that the Porsche opens it up just a little bit, but boy, they get into the braking zone here for the roller coaster and start this drop, and Wagner closes right up.
Well, I think what we've learned about this Ferrari is that its strong suit is not power or straight line speed. It's definitely a very good handling car, very good on the brakes, and overall in terms of lap times, the Porsches and the Ferrari are quite close. But there was someone ducking into the pits. I don't think
it's one of the SRP2 entries.
I don't think it was the Crawford, but certainly on overall lap time, these cars are very, very close.
Let's see here, watch Wagner. This time he's not quite as close, and doesn't, or at least doesn't make quite the brazen move up the inside. That's Elliott Forbes Robinson in the number 17 AB Motorsport Nissan Pilbeam, and this is fairly serious. He's out of the car.
Yeah, I don't like
taking the whole front end off.
I don't like anyone's body language here.
No.
I mean, you could just tell by the way Elliott got out of the car. We just saw the Crawford go through the bottom of that shot. So the Crawford now is also in the pit lane.
And it's way too early for any of these, you would think, to be planned. Well, they're putting it back up here again. And EFR is out. Looks like are they going to do the driver change as well? Let's go down to Sandy Hang.
The problem, they say, is that the engine is missing. They think they have a fuel problem. You can see they're checking. They've got the computer out, trying to look at some of the aspects of the engine. Getting back in, they're going to take it for another run and see what happens.
Well, doing that all-important data dump into the computers to find out what the electronic management is saying, those error codes of sorts that you see on the dash of your personal car, just a little bit more high-tech version of it. So they're going to send them back out with a different driver on board.
Well, a little bit early in the 500-mile race to be having to deal with that. There is Didier Tays about to put a lap on our GT leader.
Barbosa doing a nice job of knowing he was there and just staying out just a little bit.
Well, yeah, but even GT cars, SRP cars, that required some cooperation there from Barbosa.
And that's exactly what you talked about. And you're in those twisty bits here on this track. With it being a bit narrow in those sections, sometimes it's tough. Barbosa doing a nice job. Let's check in again with Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, the reason Andy Wallace came in is he had a puncture on the left front. So basically they took the opportunity to refuel him and put on 4 brand new tires. He's back out there.
Oh, and Guy, we just had Wagner trying a huge move on Spencer Pumpelly. He got by him, but was into that horseshoe for turn 1 way quick, Jeremy. Floated wide, and Spencer just cut underneath us back in second. Oh, big losing a spin. Pumpelly has gone around. Apparently got the adrenaline pump going a little bit when he got back by Wagner. And I don't know whether he got a little wide, got offline, or whether he just grabbed too much throttle, Jeremy, but around it went.
Well, Spencer did a very nice job down at turn 1 to read the pass and to go back underneath Kurt Wagner, but couldn't keep it together. And Guy.
Yeah, the crew came to me about 6 laps ago and came to me and said, we may come in early because we've got tyre pressure problems for Spencer Pumpelly. Maybe that's causing some of the driving difficulties he's having, so obviously he will come in now.
Well, you'd sure think so, but boy, it was an exciting moment here. Both the double pass, and Jeremy, here comes Wagner. He really set it up nicely, but too quick.
Well, he came again from a fair distance behind, so I guess Spencer's not happy on the brakes, but he gets in too hot. Spencer reads it beautifully and says, okay, I'll just take that back, tucks in underneath him, and that's the classic pass-repass where Wagner's in too hot. But now, Spencer gets into this left-hander a little bit wide, a little bit hot, drops that right rear off the racetrack, spins back to the inside. Wagner just reads that, and he says, I'll take that, thank you very much.
This was fairly close. Wagner is, watch here as Pumpelly spins right across Wagner's nose.
Well, you know, if you're Kurt Wagner, you know that car's probably going back to the inside, so he never even really moved his hands because he knew that car was going back to the inside.
So Pumpelly perhaps having a little bit of a handling problem on that machine, but still in all, running third in GT here in Virginia. We'll be right back. The first program for a new series called IMSA, the International Motorsports Association, told of its first ever race, the Danville 300 at VIR in 1971. That race proved to be the start of a huge boom era for professional road racing in America, featuring some of the sport's greatest names. Sadly, only 3 years later, in October of '74, VIR held its last race. It was, ironically, a very popular Sports Car Club of America regional, featuring a wonderful mix of sports and formula cars and a glorious ribbon of asphalt, all too soon relegated once again to pasture, the echoes of race engines silenced for some 26 years. Well, those engines, for the most part, are alive once again at VIR, but not for this car. Well, actually, the engine's fine, but a problem apparently for the number 66. We've had a very sudden rash of developments in the GT category with huge implications on the points. One, this car, Kevin Buckler behind the wheel, coming out of the Oak Tree turn, pulled over and just slowed to a stop. At almost the same time, the number 24, the Mosler, which had been leading in the class and, of course, a major player in the points, Guy Hobbs, came into the pits as well.
Yeah, Barbosa brought it into the pits, and actually right now he's about to take it back out because they've done the repairs. It was a gear linkage cable. They had to replace it. It took them a bit longer than they expected, but Yao Barbosa is now back out. Sandy?
An update on the 66. Kevin Buckler radioed the crew, said the throttle cable broke. It's stuck in neutral, not in gear. If he would have had it in gear, he might have been able to limp it back. They say they are trying to make that repair, but it will be a lengthy one and a very, very difficult situation for that Porsche. Guys?
Thanks very much, Sandy. And Jeremy, I mean, Kevin Buckler owns Racers Group. He knows these cars. The driver can work on the car. If he could get out, get underneath it, and somehow get it into gear, in theory, he could still drive that back to the pits.
Yeah, I think Sandy said by mistake throttle cable, which he meant was shift cable, and that's what Kevin radioed back to the crew, that the shift cable was broken. And unfortunately, it probably broke on a gear change, which means it was going through neutral when it broke, and now it's not stuck in gear. So they're a long way from the pits. As a matter of fact, pretty much as far from the pit lane as you can be back there. And there's the team car.
Oh, unbelievable here. This is the team entry. This is Christine Perot from Charlottesville, Virginia here, regular at this track, working with the Racers group in their second car this time, and they're struggling as well. In the GT category, the beneficiary of all these problems is this Ferrari with Court Wagner behind the wheel. Of course, Court and teammate Bill Oberlin leading in the points, but just barely coming in here. And with these developments, if this hangs together, they're looking to gain some serious advantage in the points championship here. And Court Wagner, in yesterday's Grand Am Cup race for the Grand Sports Division cars, he and his teammate Brent Martini put in a brilliant drive in just atrocious conditions and was able to bring home a win there. Let's check back in with Guy Howard, more developments with the Mosler.
Well, just a quick reminder, guys, the big announcement this weekend that Mosler, now running in GT, next year, of course, will be running in the GTS class. So they're trying to wrap up the championship in GT this year to go GTS next year.
That car should be a force in the GTS division with the changes that Morris and Mosler are going to be putting in, and they're still going to be doing their entrance support program for teams that run that car. Very good package.
Well, actually, a big move afoot by the sanctioning body, by Grand Am, to try and consolidate some of these GT categories, because right now you've got GT, GTS, and GTS has not been that popular this year. As a matter of fact, we don't have any GTS cars entered this weekend, and of course the AGT cars. And really, I think everyone looks at it and says, hey, let's try and consolidate these, get more cars in the class, and therefore have better, more competitive racing.
I think it's a very good plan, and of course in the future they would like to eventually see two classes, the Daytona Prototypes and the GTs. That simple, very easy to follow, and large numbers in each group and have some great racing. But once again, talking about Wagner here, really a great drive. Those conditions yesterday were just terrible, and Wagner got behind the wheel after having watched, got out there, really didn't have any experience on the track at that point with the conditions, and within a couple laps started to throw in fastest race laps. Right now, Andy Wallace, who is the quickest car on the track, Wallace has really been throwing in some fast laps after that stop to take care of that puncture and trying to run back down Didier Tays. Wallace has gone by both of the SRP2 cars now, sits in second spot, but is still about 50 seconds or so adrift right now of Didier Tays, and that one puncture, that stop, could be the telltale here right now. But Wallace running very strongly. Now let's go back and Jeremy, we've got a look at what happened to Christine Perot in the number 67 Porsche here.
Well, I've actually already seen this replay, so I know what's coming. And watch that left rear. It's going to brake right here. See, it brakes right there, and there's nothing she can do with that car. That suspension is broken, but the bodywork was already broken, so it leads me to believe that she either made contact with a tire wall or someone made contact with her car, because clearly something was already broken. That was not the suspension just breaking on its own.
Oh, and Court Wagner, boy, we haven't seen a mistake out of him in 3 days, but he is off here. We don't want to jump into it and say I don't know whether he got help or what, but now here's the problem, isn't it? You get down in this, it is so wet, and he may not be able to get that car backed out and onto the racing surface again. Although, boy, he went off in a spot where it's, smart move, turning it into a front drive car to get some grip. Wagner thinking there.
And I'll tell you where he went off there is a very fast section of racetrack, because that's the uphill braking zone for the Oak Tree turn. And there's a look at the points, and you can see, so far Wagner has been off the racetrack, though. He is at least rolling again. Buckler running into trouble, Barboza running into trouble. So the question is, who wants to win this championship?
Yeah, everybody seems to be throwing it away, but at least he threw it away briefly there and was able to get back on again. The other two major players in here, the Mosler now is down a few laps, and of course the 66 car is dropping laps very, very quickly here while they're struggling with that problem at this point. So Wagner, even though he went off track, still, I think, probably even held on to the lead at this point. Nope, he didn't, because Spencer Popelli was close enough.
And there's a quick replay of it, and we didn't catch the start of it, but that is where Court Wagner went off, which is just, you crest that hill, and it looks like he might have been a little bit wide of the apex and maybe got a little wiggle out of the car, ended up off in the grass, and no harm, no foul right now. As a matter of fact, he's totally bypassed the pit lane because he knows he didn't hit anything hard. All he did was probably cooled his tires off quite a bit, got a little mud on them, and now they'll be coming back up to temperature and cleaning those tires up.
Well, you get off track here, it's as slippery as can be. So he was able to gather it up, get it back on track, and running second in GT right now and on a charge. Well, from a rock to a hard spot, number 24 Mosler, after getting the problems taken care of in terms of the mechanical, Barbosa now has gone off track, and you see him backing up, and there's the problem. These cars so close to the ground, he was backing up simply to try and be able to get a run to get over some of this rough stuff here, but there's no grip out there, and right there he starts to run into that rough stuff. The car bottoms, and he's parked.
Yeah, and keep in mind, those are slick tires. There's no tread on those tires whatsoever, so it's very difficult for him to find grip, and wherever he goes here, he's going uphill. And it may be very gently uphill, but if you've ever been on ice or snow, it doesn't take much of a hill to impede your progress, and that's exactly what's happening to him right now. All he's trying to do now is find some kind of momentum in some direction.
Well, right there, he's figured out to maybe try something along the lines of what Wagner was doing to try and back it up, but then he gets stuck once again. Very frustrating. Let's check in with Sandy.
Right now, Kevin Buckler has radioed his crew. He says he's going to try to fix that shift linkage himself, which under Grand Am rules, the driver can work on the car, otherwise they have to tow it into the paddock. If he can't get it fixed, they're standing by in the paddock to help him.
Well, as we said, Buckler is certainly adept. He owns Racers Group, and he actively works on those cars all the time, so he can certainly at least get it into gear and be able to get it down into the pit lane where the crew can go after it. But for João Barbosa, it's still this same struggle right here, and even to get a safety vehicle out there and hook up and move him could be problematic.
Well, the problem he's about to run into is an overheating race car, because these cars don't have any fans, and he's got no air getting into those radiators. So I would say in the not too distant future, he's going to have an overheating race car.
And while all of this is unfolding with the off by Wagner, number 34, Spencer Pumpelly, with that early spin, and still struggling apparently with maybe some minor handling problems, because they never did make a stop to take care of it. Pumpelly leads it, but now a full course yellow has been called, no doubt due to the problems of the Moser right there in the middle of the track, and apparently in an impact zone. There comes the pace car on the track, and certainly this will help Wagner be able to get back up to Pumpelly, but the big gainer here is Andy Wallace.
Well, I'll tell you what.
He's got it. Taze is in. Taze, the overall race leader, is ducking down into the pits here under this yellow to try and get work taken care of. Oliver Kuttner already has the Lola Porsche in, and here comes Taze, Sandy.
Taze is in fuel, and as you watch going around the left side, putting on left side tires. This team has just had multiple gremlins with this new Judd engine in the last few races. They actually need a part of a wire harness that's made in Italy, but in Italy, everyone is on vacation during August. The factory is closed. They are trying to make do with another part they had for that engine. They're just hoping it'll last here. They're almost finished with the stuff, and Didier will be down and away.
Thanks very much. And Didier, of course, going to stay on board for this stint, but boy, very comforting, I would think, to him to know he's going to turn it over to somebody with the experience and speed of a Mauro Baldi.
Well, that sorry to back up on you here, Greg. I was watching Taze come up on, and that's a real break for these guys too. I was watching Taze come up on Pumpelly, and that could have real create a potential problem for the Ferrari team, because if in fact the Ferrari did not get past the Dallara, that would automatically give the 34 team, Pumpelly, a lap advantage on the 33 car. So I was watching that pretty closely. Here is Andy Wallace, brings the Crawford into the pit lane, and I do not see Chris Dyson heading for that car, so it looks like Andy Wallace will stay in. Of course, it carries the number 16 that the Dyson so regularly runs. Dyson team so regularly runs on their Riley and Scott cars, and Guy Hobbs is there.
It's a routine stop for the Dyson team, all 4 tires and new fuel, and is staying in the car. It's going to be a fairly quick stop. The Marcus is going to be in his way as he tries to pull out. And they have actually taken out a little gurney wing up the rear wing. So a little gurney flap up the rear wing to send Andy back out.
That gurney flap right on the top edge of that rear wing is just it's a little piece of metal that goes across the back, and it's different sizes, and it runs sort of vertical on the wing. And it's amazing, Jeremy, how a slight change in that, just a 1/16 of an inch, can drastically affect rear downforce.
Well, and remember what I said earlier, that these teams have had very little running on this racetrack in dry conditions, and it rained all day yesterday, so the track will be changing constantly today, and I think making these adjustments will be critical as we go through this very long 500-mile race.
And there is the tribulations and trials of the number 24 Mosler and Barbosa continue. He is still just sitting there, and I'm sure he's patiently, patience is probably not the word to use, he's waiting for a vehicle to get out there to try and get him moved, get him back and underway. But they were in the pits for a number of laps while they were fixing that gear cable, and now he's just sitting losing lap after lap there as well. The only thing is, and rare it is, there is Tays right behind the Ferrari, so they should be able to do the wave around, and that Ferrari with that number 34 machine, the Porsche, should be able to go. But if the Ferrari pits here, which he is not going to do, and we were getting an indication that they might, and I think Wagner and Oberlin probably were screaming, do not pit until they do the wave around.
Yeah, do not pit, because if you pit, that Dallara gets in front of you, Tays gets in front of you, and now you're back behind them. And you can see the GT leader, the number 34, third in line here. So they're all waiting for that wave by.
Very close indeed, and a wise move by the Ferrari team, playing some strategy out early here as we're under yellow at VIR. In 1998, New York-based real estate developer and sports car enthusiast Harvey Siegel partnered with Connie Lee Nyholm to purchase and breathe life back into VIR, but with a new vision. The facility reopened in 2000 as a motorsports version of an elite golf country club, and the original plantation house circa 1840 has been completely restored and serves as the centerpiece and clubhouse, replete with swimming pool, tennis courts, and even an Irish pub. The club also just opened the VIR Euro Rally School, a fully accredited rally instruction experience with 4 separate and incrementally more difficult stages totaling 7 miles. There's also a 5/8 mile karting facility and miles of motocross and ATV courses and trails. Finishing touches are going on the VIR Gallery and upscale motorsports art and collectible center, garages for club members, and the VIR Raceplex, a motorsports industrial park, already has 2 tenants. Future developments include timeshare villas and a hotel and convention center. But the crown jewel remains VIR itself, now featuring 3 different layout options, including the simply stunning 3¼ mile long course. And yes, the oak tree still serves as perhaps its most recognizable landmark and sentinel, watching over the spectacular reincarnation of road racing's grandest southern belle. And it is a very busy place indeed. There is your Ferrari running in the GT division, certainly, but more developments on the saga of the number 66 racers groups. Andy?
Championship hopes are relying on this, a new shifter cable. This is what snapped into the car. Kevin Buckley, you're out of the car doing the repair. It was stuck in neutral. How did you get it in gear to limp it back?
You know, the thing went out of me going into the back stretch, and so I went up the back stretch and then rolled the car backwards in neutral into the pit exit of the south paddock, and then we jammed it in gear and limped back over here, so the guys were trying to fix it. Unfortunately, we're 10 laps down. Our 2 closest rivals, they're not having such good luck either, so we're going to get back out there and give them hell.
All right, thanks very much, Sandy. Interesting, Buckler said his rivals are struggling. The Ferrari with a spin, that's the only problem they've had. We are about to go back to green. There is the Ferrari, and that team right now, points-wise, looking pretty strong. Pace car is in, and Tays is your leader as he comes up to it, but watch for, that's it, right there, Andy Wallace. The green comes out, he exploded by that GT Marcos, and Wallace has been able to run some quick laps, Jeremy. We would think that he is going to really set sail, try and latch on to Didier Tays at this point. Nice aggressive move there, and the AGT Corvette, the ACP Motorsports entry of Kerry Hitt, trying to get by that Morgan Dollar team, and he does.
Well, remember, Andy Wallace had that puncture early on. He lost about 1 minute and 20 seconds. He had whittled that down to just under a minute, about 57, 58 seconds. And right now, I think that Andy Wallace is capable of running down and running with Didier Tays. And here comes Bill Oberlin through the traffic.
3 abreast. And made it work, but more importantly, he's now by the number 34 Porsche, the Zip Pompelli Racing Porsche. So Oberlin back into the lead in the GT division here, essentially. And of course, that's maximum points, the whole story here, over the Mosler, which is out of the mud, but is buried still in terms of running order. And of course, the 66, and in the SRP2 division. So good chase going. There's Marino Franchitti, who has now taken over from starting driver Ralph Kellner's in the number 7 entry. And he's starting to heap some pressure on Terry Borchler, who stayed in the number 8 car when they made their stops. Keep in mind the Ferrari stopped as well, as did the number 34 Porsche. And so they are fresh, and it's just a straight up race in most of the divisions right now, including the overall division. Here's Franchitti. And Franchitti, of course, brother of kart racer Dario Franchitti. And they're coming up on the number 70, the BMW Picchio. That's their competition in the SRP2 class. The Picchio they've had engine management problems that have really kept them from developing the car itself. So they haven't been able to show the outright speed at this stage, but this car is a very good driver pairing in it. They just not quite as quick. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Movie.
Well, the Picchio is just not, doesn't have the aerodynamic package that these Lolas have. Doesn't make as much downforce. Pretty good on mechanical grip, okay on horsepower, but just not making the downforce. And you cannot be quick with a modern prototype race car unless you've got downforce and aerodynamic efficiency, and that Picchio right now just doesn't have it. Of course, Picchio working on one of the new Daytona prototypes for 2003. What was that? That looked like
smoke out of the 8. I don't know if it was tire lockup, but it was definitely some smoke off that car.
It had that look of kind of coming out of the center of the car, out of the gearbox, or it didn't look like tire lockup, but I didn't get a good look at it.
You were mentioning the Picchio and the fact that they have now committed to a 3-year program minimum for the Daytona prototypes. They've certainly conceded the championship this year to Borchelor and the Rand team. So what they're doing with this Picchio car is they're actually testing components, mechanical components and the like, that will be running in their future Daytona prototype, trying to get a little leg up, if you will, in the competition in terms of suspension components, driveline components, and that can be used in that car. We're just trying to use this as a testing program for the future.
Which is definitely the right approach to take right now. Grand Am has really locked into this concept of the Daytona prototype. That's what they're going forward with. They've got a number of manufacturers and teams interested in the concept. So that is ultimately, these SRP2 cars will be obsolete. They will run again next year, but you know, they're done. Look at this.
Boy, Spencer Pumpelly, that car, we talked about the straight line strength of that Porsche vis-a-vis the Ferrari. And he is staying very close at hand to Bill Auberlen. Now down through this section of track is where we would expect the Ferrari to open it up just a little bit. And that number 34 Porsche is right there and is very close indeed. Now they stopped. I'm not sure if there was a driver change or not. Spencer Pumpelly started. Randy Popes was brought on board as one of the drivers in that program. And Randy Popes, when it comes to driving Porsches, is one of the best in the world, period. And if Randy got behind the wheel of that car, that might be one of the reasons we're seeing this being such a strong battle right now. But nonetheless, Auberlen able to hang on at the front of the attack right now, and that is the lead in the GT division here at Virginia International Raceway. Welcome back to VIR, everybody, and this is the battle for the overall lead. There is the number 16 Crawford. Judd. Now, of course, we've talked about it, that the Dyson team really isn't here. They've got a couple of personnel here. They've got Andy Wallace and they've got Chris Dyson running this Crawford, which they did at a couple races earlier in the season. That's the car that's leading overall in an SRP with Didier Taze behind the wheel. And Jeremy, during the break, we looked up at the monitor, and these two guys could not be running closer lap time.
Well, I actually think that Didier may have just turned the quickest lap of the race, 1:40.9. That's the first time I've seen these cars down into the 1:40 range. They did run 39s in practice on Friday, but again, this racetrack not in ideal shape right now. But they are running very similar lap times. As a matter of fact, the lap before was identical. Didier was about a 10th quicker on the last lap, so these two having a terrific battle right now.
Very strong. You mentioned that as Taze turned that 1:40.92, Wallace's lap a 1:41.08, so basically just a couple of hundredths difference at this stage. That is very close, which means that Wallace is really not able to do much with Taze right now except stay with him and stay right in position. And Didier Taze looking very, very strong at this point. And Wallace, they made a change to the back of that car. Talked about changing the wicker a little bit to alter their rear grip on that machine. We'll see if that helps. Boy, a little lock up there.
Well, it'd be nice to give this battle 7 or 10 laps. Let these guys get full tire temperature. Let these cars settle in just a little bit, and continue to watch the lap times. As we said, a 1:40.9 for Didier on the last lap. That was a 1:40.2. So picked up 7/10. And Wallace a little bit slower at a 41.2. So Andy Wallace falling off the pace just a touch, and Didier really getting with the program here in this Dallara.
Wallace just driving for everything he's worth right now at this point, coming out of the first turn into the double left hooks. And this is the tighter of the two. Then this right-hand bend leads him into what they call the snake here, under the access bridge in the distance. That had me confused a little bit earlier. Through the first, these are the first set of S's. Then under the bridge into that very high-speed climbing set of S's. One of the corners of which is right there, they come over that little rise, and the cars get light, and it's quite spectacular.
Well, the whole climbing S's section of the racetrack, and then this corner here with the big plunging run down into that uphill braking zone for the oak tree turn is just a tremendously challenging piece of racetrack for these guys. And also, you sit so low in these cars, very difficult to see over those brows. So you really have to be confident with the placement of the car.
So Taze continues to run at the front. We talked about the changes that Andy Wallace had requested to the Crawford during that exchange of stops. Sandy, I guess the question would be, were there any changes made to this machine, the Dallara?
No changes to the Dallara. In fact, Didier Taze having a great run. They believe one of the reasons, they are quoting from Kevin Dorn, the tire wear is exceptional. And you know he's a guru on the tire temperatures, the tires, and maximizing. They felt very comfortable with how the tires are wearing. And that's, to put it simply, they did not have a lot of testing time in the dry conditions. They practiced all weekend and qualified in the wet. So it was an unknown coming into this race, and this team is pretty happy with that. Let's go to Guy Hobbs. Guy.
And again, a problem, technical problem apparently with Guy. We're sorry about that. But that's an interesting point here that they're surprised literally by the way that the tires are working on this track. And Sandy was absolutely right. They really had no knowledge on this. They had a little bit of dry weather running on a test day on Thursday. But other than that, it's been a wash until race time.
And the problem is when you get a racetrack like this that doesn't have a lot of rubber down on it, you can get the tires sliding across the racetrack, and it can give you really bad information both in terms of the car setup and where you're at with tire wear and tire temperatures and therefore pressures and all those things. So very difficult when you have a racetrack that is not giving you what you want.
Now, as they continue to run today, there's going to be more and more rubber laid down, particularly in the grooves and the like. Going to change the handling characteristics. So are they going to be maybe chasing these cars pretty much all day to stay with the changing track?
Yeah, well, what you want to do is you don't want to chase, you want to anticipate. You want to be out in front of, you want to get a feel for the direction the racetrack is going and then make those adjustments so that you're always out in front of it. Very, very challenging to do. There you see Andy Wallace dealing with one of the slower cars at a pretty difficult part of the racetrack. So you want to try and anticipate what you're going to need going forward.
That's basically the old phrase, the track came back to us. You change the car and anticipate what the track's going to do in the future and hope it comes together.
Hopefully. If you're really good, you can do that. Sometimes you just get lucky and the track does come to you.
Andy Wallace continues to throw some quick laps down here. Again, within less than a tenth in their last two laps. Taze a 141.8, Wallace a 141.9, and Taze at a 141.85. So Wallace again 5/100. These two cars seem extremely evenly matched on this track.
Well, now they're lapping cars. Those first 4 or 5 laps that we saw, they were free of lap traffic, and now they're into the lap cars. And this is going to be interesting to see how these guys can work the traffic. And you're going to watch Andy Wallace, for instance. He's going to catch this Mustang probably about, if these guys catch the GT cars in the middle of these S's, it's really tough for them. See right here, that timed out okay. He'll be able to hopefully, oh, that's a big crash.
Oh, that is Darren Law, and he has had a significant off in the PKO. Bodywork everywhere. Now, you can see the right front tire has been ripped off the car, but the bodywork going away, but that's a good thing, too, because that tends to take energy with it when it dissipates like that. And there's the good news. Darren stepped out on his own. He looks a little shaken up, but he's over the wall under his own power, and that's obviously was a rough ride. And boy, and the sad thing is, it looks like where he hit, he just missed the tire protection. He just missed the tire barrier and got into the Armco. And he's a little shaken up, but at least he's under his own power. See if we can go back and find out what happened here. Obviously, he got off. You can see it. He just missed all the tires completely.
And that's coming down the hill. Ooh, yeah, that is a bad accident. That's coming down the hill towards the last corner through the roller coaster. And as you said, Greg, he missed the tires. That's where it is. And Remember, I said it feels like you're falling off the edge of the earth as you come down that hill, and it's downhill, which means any momentum the car has, whether it's on the track or off the track, is going to be tough to arrest.
Well, he got into it pretty hard. You have to wonder, well, he's got his good luck charm with it, and obviously it was good to see Darren hop out of the car, so perhaps it's working, but you have to wonder if you're running side by side through that area of the track and no grip in a certain spot, off you go. We'll be back. Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Speed Channel. Check out NASCAR Victory Lane. All kinds of information from the world of NASCAR stock car racing right here on Speed Channel. Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. NASCAR Victory Lane. We are under a full course yellow, and of course the reason was that serious crash by Darren Law.
And we didn't see what led up to this, but unfortunately, boy, was that a big hit. And Darren is okay. He did get out of the car. He walked away. He did walk into the ambulance. They will take him and have a look at him, but we didn't see what led up to it. Clearly, he lost control of the car. We don't know if he lost control or if something broke on the car, but as soon as he got onto that grass, there was no slowing that car down.
Well, he got out of the ambulance. He is pronounced okay, and he has made his way to pit lane where he's with Guy Hobbs.
Darren Law, a fairly scary moment out there because it's very, very wet and very slick, and you traveled quite a way.
Yeah, it was, I don't know exactly what happened. I came down into the last right-hander, turned, and it went straight. I think something broke in the front end, but it's bad. You get off track, and I think you actually speed up in the grass.
It's been raining here, of course, solidly for the last 48 hours. Actually, a nice day today, but a very scary moment. You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. I hurt my knee a bit, but I was a little dizzy when I got out, but it was a pretty hard hit.
All right, take a breath and get rested.
Well, I would certainly imagine that he's going to wake up tomorrow and be a bit sore. That was a big hit. Notice lights are out in the pace car, so as they come down the roller coaster here, after a long delay, they had to actually work on that guardrail a little bit. We will be back underway with racing here at Virginia International Raceway. Pace car moving out a little bit to give himself just a little bit of run to get into pit lane and clear of those very fast prototypes coming up behind him. And once again, this battle at the front in all the classes is going to be rejoined. There's the pace car making the move down into the pits, and right away, Taze wasted no time, and Wallace timed it beautifulally, went right with him.
And I'm very anxious to see if Andy Wallace can do anything here with Didier Taze. They have been fairly evenly matched, but once the cars kind of settled in, it seemed that Taze had an advantage by 3 or 4 tenths, but the Dallara is never very friendly on cold tires.
Boy, you could see that car wiggling and squirming all over as Didier tried to go to throttle, and Wallace a big run on him. And this is the double left hook section here, up into the second of the left hooks here, the tighter of the two, and into the snake. And Wallace being very aggressive. Watch for it here. Taze rolls into the throttle, and it's sticking pretty well at this point. Taze actually able to jump out just a little bit here. Is that a function that left and that right following? That 5-liter really has it isn't so much more powerful or in a straight line at top end. Where it really is much better, they say, is the drivability of the torque curve coming out of the slow corners, and that's where Taze seems to be able to make up some advantage.
And there's only a couple of slow corners on the racetrack. This is one of them, and that corner that leads out into the snake section of the racetrack is also one of them. Very, very slow, and a little bit extra torque, little extra low-end grunt won't hurt at all. About 3,500 feet long, this backstretch. It moves around a little bit, up and down, relatively straight though, and then there's this left-hander. It's very blind in the approach, then the right-hander falls away here, sort of reminiscent of the turn 2, 3, and S's at Road Atlanta. It's just that it all happens quicker once you get into it. Well, the approach to that braking zone, hey, that looks like some contact for the pill beam. That left rear definitely askew. Oh, and one of the GT cars spun. That's the Morgan Dollar entry of Richards. But they've now done a driver change on that car, and it's Darius Goralia behind the wheel of that machine. And there it is again. That front spoiler digs in, just touches that dirt right there, that grass. And with those slicks on, there's absolutely no grip. Let's go back and see if we can see what actually precipitated this moment here. And that is definitely a single car incident. It almost looked like maybe he locked up on a down change. Well, yeah, he's a little wide of the apex. You couldn't tell if he was going to power or downshifting, because he could have been going down a gear, as you say, Greg. Go down a gear and just not get the revs matched properly, and on cold tires that'll spin the car very, very quickly. And there's the pill beam there on the entry to the S's. Big climb up this hill, a lot of commitment. Probably the most exciting part of this racetrack to drive these very, very quick prototypes.
These cars make a fairly serious amount of aerodynamic stick, so they look like, I mean, are they pretty much flat out through that section? And if so, that's quick.
I was watching them there the other day, and I never saw anyone do it completely flat, but that doesn't mean they haven't done it. But to do it flat, I'm sure takes a pretty solid race car underneath you and a lot of commitment and confidence in terms of where you're going to place the car.
Good look there at Didier. I'm guessing that was lock up. I think maybe locked up a front and it just was billowing out the back of the car. But obviously Andy Wallace is doing everything he can to keep the pressure on Didier here as they drop down through the roller coaster. And not able to do much with him at this point as Wallace. Taze hangs on at the front here. Action continues at Virginia International Raceway. Rally coverage is becoming extremely popular. The world's starting to follow the World Rally Championship. And we'll be bringing to you here on Speed Channel at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Leg 2 from the German World Rally, the FA World Rally Series, right here on Speed Channel. Overall leader remains Didier Taze. In fact, now Jeremy's been able to squeak out a couple of seconds over Andy Wallace as he is able to really get this car working. And we're watching. They are obviously getting very quick and running some pretty good downforce here because you're starting to see the vortexes coming off those wings just a little bit. They're definitely moving some air.
Well, you see the gap now, 3.7 seconds. There is Didier Taze, and I think shortly here, he just missed him, will come Andy Wallace. They're in the traffic now. They're lapping the cars, so there's a bit of an ebb and flow in terms of what the gap is and what these guys are able to do in terms of lap time. But it seems that once the Dallara gets some tire temperature and settles in a little bit, it's just a fraction quicker than the Crawford, and that is working for Didier Taze and not working quite as well for our man Andy Wallace. There he is.
We talked a little bit about the drivability of the 5-liter engine, the torque curve, a little bit more grunt coming out of the turns. That also works well in traffic. We've talked about it. If you're stuck behind one of these slower GT cars through a long section, that 5-liter engine ought to be able to maybe squirt through a little bit quicker, get a pass done, and not get hung up as much.
There's certainly times when that would be a factor and that would be a benefit and make life a little bit easier. But I think that again on this racetrack, there'd be a couple places where it would be very helpful. But this racetrack is definitely more about the car, about the chassis, about downforce. Really, it is very much about downforce. This section here is very, very fast. I mean, you can't really see it, but I guess Andy Wallace up through that section is probably 135, 140 miles an hour. Tough to tell when the car's coming at you like that, but it's a very, very quick section of racetrack, and that's all about the chassis and the downforce that it makes.
And sometimes timing your move just a little bit. There, let's go back to the Sports Racing Prototype 2 division, still being led by Terry Borgeler, putting in another of his Ironman type drives here, running now 3rd overall and on the same lap as the 2 Sports Racing Prototype overall leaders. The yellows have certainly helped. Right as they are about to go down a lap, the yellow has come out and it's kept these guys on the same lap. So doing a nice job running right there in the top 3 where they have finished before. As a matter of fact, they have finished as high as 2nd overall. So good run here for Terry Borgeler, and it's his team car that runs 4th and behind him right now in the hands of Marino Franchitti. The only reason that Franchitti's back a little bit was during one of the most recent caution, he actually spun or got a little squirrely on the caution lap and lost a couple of spots as a result, and that has allowed Terry to actually break clear just a little bit. But I mean, Terry Borgeler has just been the man in this class pretty much all season long. They started out with that streak of wins, he and Lazaro, and then Anthony missed a couple of races, and obviously he had some pretty good help come in and help him drive it, including a couple of guys that came over from NASCAR to spend a little time in the car. Jerry Nadeau comes to mind, but it's been Terry's championship this year. There is Marino Franchitti in the number 7 entry.
And struggling putting power down just a little bit there in the number 7 car. These cars run about 5 to 6 seconds a lap slower than their big brothers, the SRP cars. But as you said, Borgeler has been helped a little bit by the yellows here in terms of staying on the lead lap right now. As you said, they are on the same lap. And if we have an extended section here where we run without a full course yellow, these guys will go down a lap. But right now, both of these cars, these team cars, on the lead lap. Borgeler about a minute behind our overall leader, Didier Taze.
Sandy reported to us during the break that the number 7 car was struggling with some front-end grip problems. Meanwhile, here's your leader in the GT category, Bill Auberlen, the beautiful Ferrari. But you'll note who's right in front of him. Right there, you just see the tail of that number 24 Mosler. Talk about frustration. João Barbosa running quicker than the Ferrari right now. Give you an idea of just how quick that Mosler would be. The problem is he's 20 laps down as a result of the problems he experienced earlier, but maybe he's at least proving a point here right now. But it is Bill Auberlen and Kurt Wagner who are earning the points right now, and there is the number 34 Porsche, solidly third in GT. Welcome back to Virginia International Raceway as we continue to pursue the events unfolding here in the GT division. And there is Bill Auberlen, the number 33 Ferrari, that is leading in the division right now. Keep in mind, as we said, the Mosler down a number of laps, but obviously quite quick. The interesting thing here is that Auberlen now has been able to open up a bit of a margin over the second place car in GT, running 6th overall. That's the Cass Whitehead driven Jeffrey Giangrardi and BJ Zacharias machine. And right there, now that is a lap. He has just put a lap now on the 3rd place car in GT, the number 34 Porsche. And that car has proven to be quick at times here. And I have to really apologize, I guess, to the driver who started that number 34 machine, Spencer Pompelli. I had speculated maybe Randy Popes was in there the way that he was racing Kurt Wagner, and it was still Spencer. They didn't do a change on the first stop, and Spencer put in a absolutely stunning stint to run that close. Now it is co-driver Steve Ivankovic behind the wheel of that car right now, and you can see there that Auberlen was able to put him a lap down. So when Spencer gets in and when Randy Popes gets in, he's going to have to make up more than just a position. It's a lap in position.
Well, that going that lap down may be the end of the race for these guys unless the 33 car hits trouble, because to get that lap back will be very, very difficult. Even if they go yellow right now, they're still a lap down, and they don't have the advantage of being able to catch up, and that might be the end of their day in terms of getting the class win here in GT.
Let's check in with Sandy.
Right now, the 67 is back in the pits. Actually, what happened is they broke a left rear upright. They took it to the paddock, repaired it, had to bring it back in because they forgot a bushing, making the repair again, and now Paco Ortiz is firing up the car, and they've got this Porsche going.
Heads out with the damage to the left rear corner. As you can see, the team car, the number 66 of Buckler and Mike Schramm, is out and running quite quickly right now, as a matter of fact. The problem for them is they're as many laps adrift as is the Mosler. They actually are running just a few laps in front of the Mosler, but still the better part of 20 laps behind the overall battle in GT. So for Buckler and Schramm, this is simply a points gathering exercise, trying to make lemonade out of what's been a lemon of a day so far.
Let's make lemonade. Tough for them to make lemonade today. There's the leader. Remember I talked about the momentum these guys have had in this Ferrari, and also that the 24 car all year long has been the fastest race car. No one disputes that at all, but they have run into reliability problems on a number of occasions, and that's really what has held them back. But this Ferrari team has really hit their stride. 3 straight, going for 4 straight here at VIR.
Keep in mind, this is what Ferrari intends to use as sort of the answer to the Porsche GT3R and RS program. It is the 360 GT. It's getting some pretty good support. They continue to upgrade the cars, work on it, and Gerard Perigo, the watch company, coming on board and helping actually with the official a watch program for them as well. Very rare in that whole program. We've seen it's gotten better and better and better, and it doesn't hurt that they have a couple of very strong drivers behind the wheel. And then we go to the AGT category, the American GT class right now, and that is the Morgan Dollar Motorsports entry, Sandy, and they're currently running first in class, but it's been eventful.
It has been eventful. Down here, the Ford of Tommy Riggins, the number 48 AGT car. Look at, they're scrambling on this car. Tommy, what happened?
Well, the nose frame broke, and it's letting the under tray drag, so we're going to have to replace the nose.
Completely replace it.
Yeah, that's quicker than trying to repair it.
Now, don't forget, guys, this is the team that won in Watkins Glen last race, and they would like to get this back out. They do still have a chance.
That is the car. That Mustang has been very, very quick. Of course, we talked about that earlier when Riggins brought it on board. From the get-go, they've had their little mechanical problems, but they've been very, very effective and reliable as of late. Sort of a fluky development here for them. But this number 46 Corvette, the Morgan Dollar entry of the Andrew and Stephen Richards and then Darius Gralla, has been very effective all season long. They've run another car. They've run 2 cars on occasion. Both of them have finished well. Very well turned out, very well prepped cars, and certainly quite quick as well.
It's funny that Tommy Riggins didn't volunteer the information about how that nose broke.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just a mechanical failure, or do you think that car was off the racetrack? We haven't seen it off the racetrack
I don't know
at all.
if many
They don't know how it broke. They don't know how it broke, guys. They don't know how it broke. They said he didn't go off the track. I said, Tommy, come on. No, he said this co-driver, Dave McIvern's been doing very well. And if you look at the front, you can see there's no body damage. So let's go to Guy. Guy?
Yeah, we're a little further down, and Andy Wallace has pulled into the Crawford pit box area. Strange that they have chosen to do this under green, but I think that the point is that Andy was getting sick of the fact that he was losing time to Didier. It's going to be just a drive change and fuel, and I think they're going to stick on the same tyres for now. Taking a little bit longer. Of course, Chris Dyson experienced at doing the driver change with James Weaver, but not having done it with Andy Wallace. Plugging in his radio and his drinks bottle. We'll try and get a word with Andy too shortly, but the car looks in good shape. No other aerodynamic adjustments. We've seen quite a lot of other adjustments going on some of the SRP2 cars, especially Marino Franchitti. Chris looks like he's struggling just a little bit there, not very comfortable.
Yeah, that crew member guy really struggling to get the belts done up, apparently. And then he stalled it as well, so they're going to have to give it the old push start, which they can do here.
He is very close to going down a lap here. I mean,
he is going to go down a lap. Or is he?
Well, I think he will end up going down a lap because he's getting into this car, even though they left the warm tires on it. He's not on cold tires, but there he is. So he loses that lap.
So that is it. Didier Taze now on a lap of his own here at Virginia International Raceway compared to second in class. We'll be back. Welcome back to Virginia. Our leader is in. Sandy?
Right now, a planned pit stop for this team. Mauro Baldi will be getting in the car. Didier Taze getting out of the car after a wonderful, phenomenal stint for this team. I talked to the head of the team, Kevin Dorn, just before the stop. He said no adjustments, tires, fuel, and driver. Let's go now to Guy Hobbs. Guy?
Looks like there's a bit of a problem on the exchange, Andy, between you and Chris Dyson. Cost a little bit of time, and then the stalling. You've gone down a lap, but now they're making their stop.
Yeah, we had a problem with the seat belts. They got caught or jammed or something, so we lost a little bit of time. There's still a long way to go, so no problem. I mean, the car's running really well. I really like the car. The Crawford's a really nice car. But Didier just has the legs on me in 1 or 2 places, and I could stay with him if we got a good break in the traffic. Every time we caught a car, I caught it, and he managed to pass it before the corner, which is really unfortunate. But anyway, it's a good race, and a long way to go yet. We're not down yet. We can still win this thing.
Are you glad to be driving the Crawford for the first time?
Well, it's wonderful to be driving the Crawford. It's such a lovely car, and it's great to be back with Dyson Racing. I haven't driven for Dyson for a few races now, and it's really, really nice to be back.
Any truth to the rumour that it was Catherine Crawford that got you in the car?
Well, that's for you to figure out.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Back down to you, Sandy.
We're down with Didier Taze just out of the car. Great run, Didier. Absolutely great.
Well, so far the car's going very well. The handling is quite good. A little bit on the steer, but just enough for safety, because with all those trucks going on the racetrack, they bring mud and everything. You know, it's better to be safe than sorry, but so far everything's going well. Great pit stop from the team, you know. So far, no complaint.
How do you put the other races out of your mind, the problems of the last few races, to focus on today?
Well, I mean, you just try to forget what yesterday was. Unfortunately, a good racetrack like the Glen, we didn't have any result this year because 2 times in a row, the 6 hours in June and the sprint race in August was a bad weekend for us, but hopefully everything is fixed now and the car running well.
One more question about tire wear. Kevin Dorn said it was exceptional. What was it from your perspective behind the wheel?
It's not too bad. You know, the front give up faster than the rear, but so far it's a good balance.
Okay, let's go now to Guy Hobbs. Guy?
Yeah, the number 34 third place Porsche has come in. Steve Ivankovic has stepped out, but now Randy Pokes, the Porsche Meister, has got behind the wheel, changed all 4 tires and added fuel, and it looks like he's going to be ready to go out of here pretty quick. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks very much. And there's a look at that machine as they complete the change, but you just saw a glimpse of the number 16 machine, and it had gone around. So young Chris Dyson obviously coming to grips with the Crawford, and it was a very quick spin, Jeremy, but that's costly.
Well, it is costly because a lot of things can happen, even though it may be as the 34 car makes its way back out onto the racetrack. You can flat spot tires, you can fill air intakes with debris, you can do a lot of things. So, and of course you lose time, which is the last thing these guys need to be doing after that pit stop, which was not, it's almost like these guys hadn't practiced their pit stop. I mean, certainly it was a long stop. The big problem seemed to be with the belts and getting Chris in the car properly. And usually you rehearse those things, and usually you make sure that that's the last place. As a driver, the last thing you want to have hold up a pit stop is the driver change.
Let me ask you one thing about that. Obviously, Chris has driven this car. He mentioned about running it earlier at Fontana and the like, but they've had a lot of races where they've run the old Riley and Scott with the big booming V8 in the back. Is it a much different beast for him to be driving this this highly revving V10 right now and making adjustments to that?
I think they're definitely different cars, and you know, the one thing everyone has always said about the Riley is that it is just incredibly user-friendly, and I think that's the right place for Chris Dyson to be. I'm not saying that the Crawford isn't, but certainly the V10 is a little bit more difficult to drive than the V8 is, because the V8's just got more flexibility.
A little peakier, you're saying. And yeah, and that Riley and Scott is known to be quite forgiving. Let's go back now. Our crack videotape crew has found what happened to the number 16 here, Jeremy.
And that's just a simple loss of grip. That is actually a very tricky approach. That is the approach to turn 3 or 4, depending on how you count here. And you come through that little kink, and then that braking zone is all braking and turning. The car is never straight in that braking zone as you slow down for that tighter left, and it's pretty easy to lose the car there.
So Dyson had it go around on him. He's back at speed, but time is of essence for them right now here at VIR. The Daytona Prototype class, slated to become the premier division in the Rolex Sports Car Series beginning next year, continues to gather major momentum with manufacturers. Crawford Composites joins a growing list of companies showing off their latest gains in the development of the race car to the press.
I think the Daytona Prototype has provided a platform for many people to race in a program that is not overly too expensive, really, I think, but also splendid racing. I think it's wonderful racing, still utilizing the high technology that we use in the prototypes now. So I think you've got a wonderful platform to have an exciting kind of racing. We're almost, to have the closed coupes again, I think is a very interesting concept.
Recently, a 40% scale version of the Crawford Daytona Prototype DP03 underwent wind tunnel testing. And after analyzing the data, the Crawford engineers will finalize building the full-size car. Overseas, Italian-based Picchio have 25 engineers and designers working on their prototype. Grand Am officials visited the facility recently and came away very impressed with the commitment to the series.
Many of the regulations for the cars are fixed for everyone. But the Picchio's style, its look is very different, very unique, and obviously very attractive. So I think even though many of the things on the cars are the same by the regulations, the creativity shown here is very impressive. It's a very beautiful car.
In addition to developing the chassis and body styles, engine development work is running full throttle. And we'll take a look at that a little later in the broadcast. It's going to be very interesting to see how those new Daytona prototypes develop, but a lot of promise in that division. Boy, a lot of promise right here for Didier Taze and Mauro Baldi. If they can make their way around Chris Dyson right now, put him down a lap solidly at this point, Jeremy, that could all but seal this one for them, I think.
Well, it'd certainly be a big advantage because right now Chris is in a position where if a yellow comes out, he can make up all of the deficit that he is down right now, which is basically a lap minus about 2 car lengths. But Mauro Baldi's determined to get it done, and I think he knows in this braking zone that's his opportunity.
Boy, and he just knifed underneath with aggression and then keeps it parked, absolutely able to protect on the exit of the corner. And Dyson, even though he may have thought about turning underneath, was not able to get it done. Baldi judged that braking maneuver beautifully, and there, big wiggle from Dyson there. He's close. But obviously the car working awful hard at this point right now. It'll be interesting to see what happens now. They come out of the left hooks and into the snake section, and watch here, see if Baldi able to drive away just a little bit, and looks like he's able to do just that. He quickly opens up 2, 3, 4 lengths.
I do feel that Chris Dyson, keep in mind, this is his first year in professional racing, and he's had a high comfort level with the Riley and Scott. The Crawford, you know, may be a little less comfortable to drive than the Riley and Scott. Right now, his pace about 2 to 3 seconds slower than what Andy Wallace was doing in that Crawford. So I don't think anyone expects him to hang with Mauro Baldi here. And the fact that he's a couple of seconds off what Andy can do. Andy's been, you know, professional race car driver for roughly 20 years and definitely one of the best sports car racers on the planet. So the fact that Chris Dyson in his first season of professional racing can't hang with Andy Wallace is nothing to be ashamed of in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I think you can easily put it in perspective in that Chris Dyson is a young rookie. He's 3 seconds off Wallace's pace, and Wallace is one of the very few drivers to have won the big three in endurance racing, Le Mans, Daytona, and Sebring. So I think that it speaks very highly for the future that Chris Dyson has at this stage. But yeah, you're right. I mean, how are you going to, as a rookie, be able to run that kind of a pace right now? And he's doing a nice job. And he's up against Mauro Baldi, who, of course, his sports car and endurance racing credentials. I mean, he's driven Formula One, he's driven endurance racing, and is acknowledged as one of the very best at that as well. So Dyson doing a nice job right here. And as you said, this chassis, I mean, that Riley and Scott is a very user-friendly chassis, but sometimes that means that there's so much grip and the like that it's not exactly always not necessarily the fastest car in an opportunity. And at this point right now, ooh, big moment right there for the number 26 machine. That is the leader in GT right now. That is a car that has been right on the edge the whole time. The ACE MCO automotive machine, Cass Whitehead, Jeff Giangrande, and BJ Zacharias. And it's BJ behind the wheel right now. BJ, one of those drivers that's never really had the brakes. I watched him in club racing. He won a Formula Atlantic National Championship. Is incredibly talented driver, but never got the break, the big bucks, the contract, and the like. But boy, every time he gets behind the wheel of a car, he's quick.
And this is just Chris Dyson trying to minimize his lost time on the racetrack. We'll have another look at it. And not a real conventional place to pass, but if you're a prototype lapping a GT car, it's not a horrible place to pass, but it's a bit of a late pass. You can see Chris kind of climbs up the curb. I think maybe BJ gets a little bit surprised by it, gets hung out a little bit on the dirty stuff, and that wasn't as nasty as it looked. You know, a little dust on the racetrack makes it look a lot more dramatic.
That is what we talked about earlier, though, with the stripe being so green and offline. It's terrible. There's just nothing out there. Now that they've rubbered in the groove a little bit, it's more pronounced when you do step offline, and that's probably what helped BJ step out just a little bit. But stepping out in fine style, Mauro Baldi continues to just ease away from the pack here in Virginia. Welcome back, everybody, and the number 7 entry is in the pits. Guy Hobbs, I see you there.
Marina Franchitti is jumping out. Nicholas Johnson is jumping in for his first stint of the day. A set of scrub tires going on. Remember earlier I told you about the, well, just told you in a break that they're taking put the end plates on the front. Well, I guess Marino's decided not handling that well, and they're now going to take those off. They put them on under that last long yellow. And here you can see they go to work on both sides, taking those off. Marino's out the car, fuel is all in, so it's just a matter of time to get these done.
Well, thanks, Guy. It was interesting. We were watching a little while ago, and that car after the stop was quite loose, so makes sense. Here now is your leader in the American GT entry. This is Steven Richards now doing the driving of this car and doing a nice job, but there have been some problems. Darius Gralla, when he was out driving in the car, had a couple of moments, and this was one of them right here. This is the same spot where we saw so many problems earlier, and we saw that earlier. That was just that lockup, Jeremy, on that rear wheels.
Yeah, I think you might have hit that on the head. That might have been a downshift. It's hard to know from up here, but certainly the rear of the car got away from him. I don't think it. Oh, look at this. Baldi is in the barrier. Mauro Baldi in the barrier.
This is huge. Now, keep in mind, watching the struggles of, and he stopped. Once again, he has gone off, and there is it's so difficult to get back on, and that's entering the snake. So something happened there. There now is Dyson. And Dyson, of course, keep in mind, is a full lap plus some time back. But as long as Baldi sits here, Dyson's coming out. Look at that, it's just spinning.
And this is the replay. We didn't see if there was anyone else involved. Remember I said you get on that grass. Oh boy, this is going to be a hit too. This is not going to be a little light tap. No, at least it hit flush. So if he can get it rolling, he should be okay. He's going to want to stop in the pit lane. Dyson is now back on the same lap, so if he gets by him again, it will be for the race lead. Baldy is running. We can't see the left side of the car, but you know the Dorn team will be on it. Boy, I'd love to see what led up to that. Mauro Baldi, not the type of guy to make mistakes. But boy, you didn't see any other cars around him.
The only car I saw was that BMW Norma, but it looked like it was off in the distance, unless that Baldi had tried to move or something and got moved offline. And we've seen you get off on the offline here. It's pretty bad. There's Kevin Dorn on the right, walking away from us right now, who's obviously chatting with Mauro on the radio, talking to the crew, trying to determine what might be a problem, what they may have to look at, what they may have to fix.
Well, there's the left side of the car, which it actually doesn't look bad. And because it hit kind of all at once, I'm sure that alignment-wise, the car is not exactly where he would want it to be. No question about it. But certainly nothing is broken right now that we can see.
Yeah, I mean, there's barely a mark over there. So, I mean, it hit that guardrail, but it hit it so flush. We'll see what his times are doing at this point. And, of course, if he does make a quick duck down into the pits, down at the bottom of the roller coaster, here he comes. That's that very quick corner at the bottom of the hill. And he elects not to pit at this stage.
Well, we backed our tape up a little bit just to make sure there was no traffic there for Mauro Baldi. And there definitely was no traffic. There's Baldi all by himself. Now, he does go out of the frame, but there's no traffic in front of him. But then the cameraman knows what's going on because these guys are on the ball. And you can see Baldi's just gone off the racetrack for some reason.
It looked to me like he was pushing as he came through that right-hander fairly bad. I don't know. That, you know, as he turned into the right-hander, he quickly pushed and was right. His front tires got off the line quick.
Now, that was not a light hit.
No. Let's check in with Sandy.
Well, you guys in the television booth actually know more than the team does right now because they have lost radio communication with Mauro. They are just speculating what could be the problem. Obviously, it's not a good situation when you can't communicate with your driver to find out what's happening with the car. So they're unsure if Mauro will eventually bring it in or just stay out.
So Mauro right now is just probably just trying to find out exactly what the car is going to be able to give him and see what it can. Now, we want to go back one more time to that replay and see it. Watch Mauro's front wheels here, and if he pushes well wide of that line here. Watch for it now.
I'm going to watch it in real time here just to get a better idea of, you know, it looks okay. I mean, nothing looks real abnormal there. Watch this hit. Watch his head here.
Oh, that hit.
Yeah, that was not a light hit. But that VIR is a strong race car.
And quick presence of mind, but he had that thing restarted immediately, back on track, and right now is back up to speed. We'll see what kind of times he's turning when we come back. We're back at Virginia International Raceway, and after Baldi's problems, Dyson now on the same lap, but Guy Hobbs, he's into the pits.
Into the pits, and is actually scheduled for another 3 laps, but I guess he suddenly said, no, I'm coming in this time. And again, struggling getting his drinks bottle hose out there. Remember the first pit stop, they had trouble with the belts, the exchange between Andy and Chris. 4 brand new sticker tires go on. Andy gets in, the fuel is going in. No aerodynamic adjustments this time. There's obviously a lot of mud and dirt along the side of the car because the track is so dirty itself. Looks like they've been a little more efficient on the belts this time, getting Andy in. He's going to plug his radio and his drinks bottle.
Well, a much better pit stop for the team that time around. Remember how much time they lost getting Chris Dyson in the car on the last stop. So even though Baldi did go by, so this car, again, 1 lap down, but we hear Baldi will stop very shortly as well. So they'll get that lap back. They were about 56, 57 seconds behind Baldi when Chris Dyson came to the pit lane.
So, yeah, as you said, though, that stop much quicker, and that they needed that, obviously. If they'd had another problematic stop, would have been a big problem at this point. Let's check in on the GT battle, which has been an interesting one. There is number 33, the Ferrari, back in the lead. The number 26 Porsche, which had been leading for quite some time, came in, did a stop. BJ Zacharias got out, and Cass Whitehead back behind the wheel of the 26 car. But that stop essentially has allowed this number 33 Ferrari, still in the hands, I believe, of Court Wagner now, to resume the lead and it's a fairly comfortable one at this point. Oh, the 46 is done, and that's Andrew Richards, the driver, second in the points coming in, and had an opportunity here to take something away from Kerry Hitt. And yeah, ran at the front very often. Problems, though, a lot of smoke coming out of that right front end, and I'm guessing that's out of the left front as well. That's cooked.
That looks like a little brake
fire.
Yeah, it looks like a little brake fire, but they can actually get going. So we want to keep an eye on that.
I think his concern is more than the brake fire. I think he knows something we don't at this point that has let go in that car. Meanwhile, here's number 33, Wagner, and here comes Baldy, and it's just a pass. Wagner ducks in, trying to get any kind of a tow he can here as Baldy rips by, puts them down another lap. So there are two of our class leaders right there. And interestingly, for Kerry Hitt in the AGT battle, at number 19 now should be back up front, and that's exactly what he wanted to see at this stage. But Court Wagner and Bill Oberlin and GT, you know, you talked about the momentum they have, Jeremy. They've hit their stride. I mean, there's no questioning their speed. There's no questioning the prep, but they've had some tremendous breaks and some good luck as well. Sandy?
Well, right now the driver has just radioed back to the team that he can't move the gears. They think they've lost a gearbox. They're strategizing, how can I get that car back here to try to get it fixed?
Yeah, well, Sandy, right now the driver himself, Andy Richards, is trying to remove the hood off of that car to be able to take a look underneath and see, but he's now going to be able to see if they can figure anything out. Meanwhile, Court Wagner is going to have a fairly comfortable lead at this stage, the better part of a lap at this point after that pit stop. So this has just been since what, about the fourth race of the season, Jeremy? It has just been, this team has just been flawless.
Well, it took them some time to get settled in and kind of hit their stride, but clearly right now they just haven't been making any mistakes. I mean, they've got a very solid driver lineup. They've got what seems to be a car that is developing very nicely, and a team that is pulling it all together for them. And that, you know, anytime you have that combination, it's going to be tough to beat a team like this.
Yeah, and it's just such a strong, consistent driver lineup, as you pointed out. You know, one of the teams that they've been duking it out with in the points all year is Kevin Buckler's team. One Daytona had the lead early, the Racers group, and that number 66 car, Buckler, has struggled today, is running quickly now, but well back. But the team car, it's been lots of problems. First of all, there was some sort of contact or something happened and caused that left front or left rear upright to break and put that car out, but they got it fixed. But since then, there's been another couple of spins. That car just struggling right now. Really working on that. It's Christine Perot, John Morton, and Paco Orti, and here's the last of the spins. And that, of course, is the approach to the roller coaster that has caught so many people out here in Grand Am Cup action yesterday and others today.
Well, a real tough day for the Racers group, too, because the 6016 car hasn't done much better with that broken shift linkage.
And there's the Mosler that right now running very quickly indeed, but as we pointed out, about 20 laps adrift of the Ferrari right now, as is the 66 car Buckler, simply due to those mechanical problems early. The pace is still there. They just haven't had the brakes, and they just haven't had the reliability of this car right here. And as a result, these two guys looking to really open up perhaps their points lead a little bit in this battle for the GT Championship in the Rolex Sports Car Series. Welcome back to Virginia International Raceway, and the GT battle is once again a close one here. And here comes, that's Bill Oberlin now, actually dives underneath the number 26 Porsche of Cass Whitehead and retakes the lead. And it's been a bit of an eventful development here for the Ferrari. And right there, Oberlin able to retake the lead in the GT battle right now. Of course, big implications points-wise, certainly, as he protects that, pads it by going to the front. But Oberlin is on board. And you notice the yellow tape on the side of that car, Jeremy, and the reason was they had an off up by the oak tree turn, and they ducked down into the pits as a result, and they had a bit of tire smoke and the problems. And here's a look at the pit stop, and look at the damage on the side of the car.
Well, the left side was damaged, and you see Bill heads for the car to get the door up and can't get the door open, so Court has to climb out through the window. There he is, launches himself out of the car. Bill goes in, so just in case, they put some tape on that door just to make sure it wouldn't open up on the fly. You can see the seal there also. It's missing the left-hand mirror, and we don't know exactly what Court Wagner hit. Probably a tire wall. We think it was up near the oak tree turn, but we're not sure. But a little bit of minor body damage. It was smoking initially as he drove it into pit lane with a little bit of tire rub on that left rear, but that seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, they got away with one a little bit here. Damage to that left side, but not terribly bad. And that looks like everything's working. The car certainly seems to be okay, and they've been able to turn laps that were pretty competitive to what they were running previously. So car working for Oberlin right now. And take a look, there's Andy Wallace going by and putting that number 33 Ferrari down. Let's go back down to Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, just caught up with Court Wagner, just climbed out the car. First of all, Court, we're not really sure where you went off.
Went off at the oak tree, the last right-hander coming onto the back straight.
Not too much damage to the side, but maybe at the left rear wheel.
I don't think there was any damage. I mean, I thought we had a suspension failure, which is why I went in, because I went to make the last right-hander and the car just went dead straight. So it must have hit oil or debris or something, because the car absolutely just did not turn. So luckily, I think we dodged a bullet on the damage side. Hopefully, the car seems to be good. We're out turning mid-54s now, so hopefully that's good.
Luckily, survived damage there, though. I must remind you, Court, you couldn't get the door open, so you had to climb in and out the window. So that's 2 doors in 2 days for you. Mind you, the last door you broke, you won.
If the result is the same, I'll take it. Absolutely. No problem. I don't mind the doors. I'll mind the wins.
All right, they're back in the lead.
Guy referring to the Grand Am Cup race for the Grand Sports Division, which ran yesterday. And when Court came in after they won it, he got out of the car, opened the door, and it came off in his hands, and he threw it away and started celebrating. So as a result, there is at this point out 33 Ferrari. Boy, he's up and over those curves, working hard, but for good measure because he's leading right now. Here, though, is the number 27 entry, Mauro Baldi behind the wheel, and they're in the lead, but that lead now is down to only 30 seconds. And take a look right there, the damage to the left front corner, that wasn't there after their first off. He went off once again, and this time apparently got into something. They had some smoke coming off of that front end. It was the front end was rubbing on the wheel, and that seems to have abated right now, but he definitely had some problems.
And the team does not have a monitor in their pit, so they don't know exactly what's happened to Mauro Baldi. They did not see the first hit. As a matter of fact, we were relaying some information to Kevin Doran through Sandy Hang because they didn't really know how hard the hit was, and they didn't really even know what to look for. They saw the wheel, and the wheel was in pretty good shape, but we saw the hit here on TV, and it was not an insignificant hit. I don't think he hit anything the second time off the road, but he's lost a bunch of time.
Well, Sandy Hang is still down in their pit, Sandy.
Well, I've got that wheel right here. Look at it. See the green paint? That's what Mauro did when he hit the first time. He did not come in after the second hit. And you're exactly right. This team does not know what's happening with the car other than the visual inspection after the first hit. They found just a little bit of body damage on the front, probably about 3 inches of crack, and a small spot on the rear. So they don't think there's a problem with the suspension, but they have no way of communicating with Mauro at this point. And so they're watching as the car drives by every single time.
Well, I think the significance of it is that Mauro Baldi's lap times now are up in the 45, 46 second range, and earlier he was down in the 42. So that car is not very happy right now.
He's running wide apexes, the whole thing. So the car, as you pointed out, not good. And I mean, that damage, it doesn't look that bad, but at speed, any kind of damage to the front splitter and spoiler on that car is going to upset it. And here's his second off. Watch this.
That's the first
one, excuse me.
That's the first one, and it takes a nice flush hit there. And that's where the left rear wheel got the paint on it. Probably got a little bit more right there.
But the second op was obviously the one where he picked up some damage. There's other stories developing as well. Guy Hobbs?
Yeah, we're down at the Dyson pit. My camera apparently has just died, but I was going to tell you, there's a sign here that says "We Can Hear." They're handing it out to, show it out to Andy Wallace. And the sign wasn't working, so they've gone to the racing store and brought the brand new pit board. They're trying to spell it out because when they put the sign out that says "We Can Hear," he radioed back, "I can't see."
So the dry erase a little bit too light on the pit board apparently, but obviously both of the lead teams here in the sports racing prototype category having radio problems, and it makes it difficult, especially when you've had some moments and some problems. Interestingly, now we've been watching these lap times, and Wallace has just lapped, say, at a 143 flat. Baldy's last lap of 1:47.6. And in the 2-3 laps here, Wallace has trimmed almost 10 seconds off of Baldy's lead. So that Baldy's car, the Doran team, might be in trouble here, and Wallace is absolutely hooked up. Guy?
Again, here's that sign that we can hear, and again, going to work, and Wallace is certainly very much hooked up at this point.
I'll tell you right now, that was written by someone that has never driven a 180-mile-an-hour race car.
Been there, done that, have you, at that point? So Andy Wallace now the bit firmly between his teeth. He smells opportunity here in Virginia. Back in Virginia, the trials and tribulations continue for the Doran team. Sandy Hang?
Not only is the leader in the pit, they cut the engine. Look at that extensive body damage to the nose. They're going to remove the nose, throw that aside. They've got another on standby to put on the car. Kevin Doran himself down inside the car, working to pull that piece, that bodywork off. As you can see, it's designed to be changed quickly, but it's still not quickly when you're under green flag racing. Mauro Baldi sitting there in the cockpit. He has apparently been able to hear the team, but the team cannot hear him on the radio. So he's been unable to communicate to the team what's happening with the car and to advise them on the handling situation. So as you can see, Mauro just sitting patiently as they make this change.
And Sandy, as he sits there, we have a new race leader. Andy Wallace in the Crawford has gone to the front and is now coming down that long backstretch and is looking at perhaps putting that Doran DeLara Judd machine down a lap at this stage while they sit and work on that car. Very quick nose change. The question would be, was there any damage a little bit deeper in? Jeremy, you talked about the concerns about maybe the suspension underneath after that first hit, and certainly that left front corner after the second hit. They don't look like they're that concerned about it.
Well, I think that based on, and he's definitely going to go down a lap here, so there is Andy Wallace.
Yep.
I think he got into a situation there where he had damaged the nose on the car, and aerodynamically the position of the nose, and especially that splitter, which is that horizontal piece that is the leading edge of the nose, is very critical to the aerodynamic balance of the car, and I'm sure the car was really not well balanced at all because of that.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not meaning to create any controversy here as we watch Andy Wallace, the new leader. Surprised that Didier didn't get back in the car at that stop?
I'm actually
just speed-wise.
No, I'm a little bit surprised that Didier didn't get back in the car because they knew it would be an extended stop, and in a way, it's not a free stop, but you would have expected to see him get back in the car.
Here is Baldy now coming out of the double left hook section into the snake and heading up underneath the access bridge here. Having a strong run. Will be interesting to see what he starts, when he can turn for laps. Wallace just turned a 1:44.3. Keep in mind, Terry Borchler and Kellner's Johnson in the 8 and 7 cars are running 3rd and 4th, and then Wagner in the Ferrari continues now. Oberlin now behind the wheel, 5th overall, leading in GT. And there is our overall race leader, and they haven't really held that position at all today, and they needed some help to get there right now. Now look at the margin here. Now keep in mind, it's this plus a lap at this stage. In watching, we saw Wallace go out of frame. There now is Baldy. It's that distance plus an entire lap that they're behind Sandy, so the struggle is on.
Well, you may have noticed that they put a quart of oil in that car. Now that is not because of the damage. Under regular conditions, it consumes that about every 2 hours, so that would be done on a normal pit stop anyway. But they are concerned with the handling, and they are concerned with the damage to the car. It is just covered with mud. You may not have been able to see that from the camera angle we showed you, but inside, Mauro is muddy.
Well, and that one of the upsides to that stop with Mauro not being able to communicate back to the crew, at least during that stop, I would, maybe he's able to yell some information to them so they'd at least have a clue as to what the car is doing.
Well, I would almost make a bet that it had quite a bit of understeer because it had a lot of damage on that left front corner, and that's the problem. When these cars go off into the grass, the grass is not perfectly. It's not like a green on a golf course. And the problem is they go off and the splitters run so low, they're so easy to damage. That gives you a good indication of what that elevation change is, which is very, very significant. Turning in right there and then climbing uphill, and then a little plateau right there, and then climb again uphill and plateau off right there, and then plunge downhill past this apex.
There it drops.
Into the braking zone.
Oh, we're getting a report. We may, I don't know why, but we may have a full course yellow being called for. pace car standing up anyway, and that would be it, perhaps. That's the 67 that has had a, well, shall we say, very eventful day. And right there, that would be an area that they are concerned about as a possible impact zone. So we may be seeing a full course yellow, and the timing couldn't have been worse. There it is. We are full course yellow. So this is going to be interesting to see how this affects things here at Virginia International Raceway. It looks like we may see a Crawford stop. An important element to the new Daytona prototypes will be the parity of horsepower among the teams. Pro Motor Engineering in Mooresville, North Carolina is responsible for testing the baseline power of engines submitted by various manufacturers for next year's inaugural season. In the past, whoever had the biggest and best had the field covered. But the premise with the new Daytona prototype is that everything is going to be relatively equal.
The car manufacturers, with such large budgets, they have created very technically advanced engines, whether it's European or American, and no single manufacturer or single engine builder could come close to that. So the concept of taking these quote production motors and then adapting them with a formula for this form of racing not only saves money, but it uses all the technology that those folks have put into it and makes it so we can have quite a competitive series.
Winston Cup team owner Robert Yates is also joining the series effort. He'll be building engines for the Ford Focus team.
It's just a great opportunity for myself, our guys, to get up to really current technology. As we look into these engines, you know, the guys really are not behind. I mean, our manufacturers who build our cars that we buy and drive, they're really sharp. And you know, our first indication is, oh, we're going to throw all this stuff away. No, after we've really gotten into it, got some pretty awesome street car engines right now, and so we want to put a little touch on, rub on it, bring the RPM up maybe a couple thousand more than what you'd want to drive on the street, but it's going to be fun.
Porsche, BMW, and Chevy have recently had their engines tested. Up next, Ford and Toyota. There will be a limit in the size and compression ratio of the engines and a few other restrictions to keep the competition as equal as possible. However, there will be some areas of the engine that can be developed by the individual teams. The next several months will be an extremely busy time for the teams as they get ready to test the new cars the first week of November at Daytona International Speedway. Well, it'll be interesting, of course, as they actually get those cars out and give them a bit of a run to see if that package they're putting together is going to be successful. And we are back to green here at Virginia International Raceway after the yellow for the number 67 Porsche. And there have been a few pit stops made, including the number 16. But because it came in with Andy Wallace a lap plus up in front, it still leads. But Jeremy, that gentleman right there, Mauro Baldi, who is still behind the wheel of that car, has gotten his lap back and has but, what, 3-4 cars perhaps separating him, less than that now, one separating him from Andy Wallace.
Well, boy, have these guys dodged a bullet. I mean, he's been off the racetrack twice, had to replace the nose. Potentially, I would say, should have damaged the suspension on the first off-course excursion. Got down a lap and got a lucky yellow. And is now back on the lead lap and is running, what, 3 or 4 seconds behind Andy Wallace. There is Wallace, who leads the race. And there is Baldi. Unbelievable.
And it was interesting. Of course, Baldi was a lap up at one point, and then it all went wrong. And now he's, as you said, dodged that bullet and able to come back up to it. So basically, we're in a fairly straight fight because it was just a couple laps before that yellow when Baldi came in and they put the new nose on. They were able to top it off and fuel it up and get new tires on it. So with Wallace pitting just a few laps later, this is pretty much a straight fight here for the overall run in the sports racing prototype division. It's going to be interesting. Of course, the GT battle will have tightened up a little bit as a result of some of this as well. And the number 8, Terry Borchler, now during that yellow got in, replaced Anthony Lazzaro. And apparently he's had a bit of an off, and you can see that has allowed the team car number 7 to be much closer. So Borchler getting in, cold tires, they did the full stop for him. and it may have caught him out just a little bit.
And taking it pretty easy as he makes the run down the roller coaster on this first lap of green flag racing. There is the gap at the front with Andy Wallace and Mauro Baldi. 1.4 seconds when they went over the line.
See if we can go back and see what happened as we watch Andy Wallace right now and see if we can pick up what may have happened to Terry Borchler, the number 8 Rand Racing Nissan Lola.
Oh, and that is that is at the top of the hill. That first turn as you crest the hill quite a bit faster than the second part of the corner there, and it looked like he just lost it on cold tires. And off in the mud there, very tough to get going, and that's where bulk of his time is lost. Doesn't look like he did any significant damage to the car getting it back on the racetrack. Look at this.
Oh, Baldi now climbing all over Wallace. That car, obviously, with the new nose on it. Apparently the suspension and everything that they may have been worried about seems to be working just fine. With the new nose, the arrow is back for him, and he is starting to really put the pressure on Andy Wallace. And they just ran through something that looked disturbingly to me like sunlight.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of that the last few days, have we?
It has been terrible here. It's great to see it. And certainly all of the workers, the volunteers, the corner workers and the like. Let's not forget our camera people and the pointers and the people that are working down in the pits for the television coverage, but the volunteers as well. They've been suffering with this for 2.5 days of just heavy rains, and happy to get the break here. But boy, look at this. Now watch, see if Baldi takes a long shot at it going into turn 1. Nope, too far back. Closes up marginally, but that's the accordion under braking, and there goes Wallace, gains it back on exit. So the lap time's 1:42.2 for Wallace, a 1:41.2 for Baldi at this point, and that gives Baldi the Zippo Hot Lap Award. So Mauro will appreciate that after some of the struggles he's had to be able to get right back to it and start turning some quick laps again. Great speed shot under the bridge and now into the climbing S's. Boy, Andy working those curbs very aggressively.
Definitely the most intense part of this racetrack in these prototypes, climbing that hill. Wow, look at how close Baldi is. And Wallace having to be defensive. So the Dallara definitely better through the high-speed S's, which would tell you that that car is making more downforce, because that is all about downforce coming up that hill.
Looked to me like when Wallace clipped that one curb, it actually unsettled the car and he scooted a little bit. And I wonder if he had to suddenly get out of it just a little bit with the car chasing behind at full song, as you said, obviously working much, much better now.
Well, the problem when you come up through the S is that initial turn in at the bottom of the hill, the left-hander, we'll have a look at it the next time they go through. That can really set the tone for everything that happens going all the way up that hill. And if you get that just a little bit wrong, it kind of has an amplifying effect as you make your run up the hill. And so if you are a foot or two off turning in at the foot of the hill, the initial left-hander, you're done.
Here they go around the leader in the AGT division. That's the number 19 Advanced Composites Products Corvette. And the Ferrari is off. Another moment for the Ferrari. And back on at this point.
We haven't seen these guys off the road yet this season, and now this is the third time in this race.
I think in this case the sun startled them.
It may have. Okay. I don't know.
I've played that card enough.
Yeah, you played that card. That joke's done. But
thanks.
Here's a replay. Oh, it could have been.
Oh boy.
Oh, he just got caught out with the closing rate there. Very unlike Bill Oberlin. And again, luckily here at VIR, a lot of room to
run, but you get off in that like you do, then it takes you forever to get back onto the track. Meanwhile, boy, this battle very strong for the front right here as Mauro Baldi starting to reel in Andy Wallace once again. Welcome back to Virginia International Raceway, late in the running in the 8th round of the championship for the Rolex Sports Car Series, the VIR 500. Greg Creamer, Jeremy Dale, along with Guy Hobbs, Sandy Hang. Here is your race leader, Andy Wallace. And the big surprise is now it's by over a lap. And the reason is, well, a couple of stops by the number 27 car, Mauro Baldi behind the wheel at the time. And one of them was a complete surprise. The team was not at all ready for it. Watch this reaction. They come in. Baldi looks over, they're chatting with him on the radio, and watch what he does here. When they're talking with Kevin Doran, they're asked, why did you come in? And Baldi goes, we don't know. Exactly what Baldi said at this point. It almost as if, well, I thought I was told to. Not many laps later, they brought him back in again, now within their fuel window to get to the end of the race. But Baldi was getting out, and they were putting Didier Tays in the car. With more on this developing story, check in with Sandy.
Actually, neither time did they know Mauro was coming in. What happened on both those stops, Mauro? The team says they didn't know you were coming in.
I heard that on the radio there was they called pit now. I heard pit now, so I confirmed that I was pitting. So that's what I heard on the radio, so that's why I came in. Maybe I pick up somebody else's signal. That's what I guess, because the radio was perfect all the weekend. So I don't know really what happened, but I heard pitch now, so that's why I came in earlier. The car was perfect, it was going well. So even after I went out twice, I mean, I don't know today what's happening to me, but maybe I wasn't concentrated enough. I have no idea. I made 2 mistakes, lock up the front tires, went on the grass. When you go on the grass in this track, you lose the car. So I touched a little bit the rail the first time. I could catch back the track. The car was going well in any case. In fact, lap times were good.
Very
no, it's a bad day. I don't know what to say.
A frustrating day. We've all had bad days, Mauro, but this is one that he's hoping that the team can make up the difference here in the end. A long caution, maybe they can get that back.
Boy, some refreshing honesty from Mauro Baldi to say I had a couple of problems. And his comments about the radio, maybe there was some bleed and they were picking up another channel. Meanwhile, you'll note here a great battle shaping up in the SRP2 division, but it's the number 7 car that is out front right now and leading this one. Terry Borchler had a fairly substantial 30-plus second margin lead not too long ago in this one. And he's now chasing Ralph Kellners, and this is an outright scrap for the lead. And the number 16, Andy Wallace, is in, and this looks like it's planned, and it should be within their window. And Wallace is going to stay on board. And Jeremy, I would think he ought to be able to take her home.
I think he should be able to take the car home from here. We'll have to let him get back out, but clearly you see the tires go on. There is Didier Tays, as you said before. He is a lap down. The fuel goes in, so getting every bit of fuel in that car, and off it goes.
Well, we'll see if he was able to get back on that same lap. Tays has been throwing in some unbelievably quick laps. You saw the graphic, 140 flat at one point for Tays, which may have been the fastest lap of the race. Meanwhile, back to this SRP2 division battle. Oh, and Borchler's off again! And Terry Borchler in his pursuit. Running a little bit wide, but that's actually what got him into trouble in the first time, because Kellners now has set quick lap in that class at this point, but Borchler actually had an off. As I said, he had a pretty decent margin built up in that class. And Jeremy, he had an off, and it cost him dearly.
Very quick section of racetrack as you come out of the S's, the climbing S's there. And you crest that hill. You can't really see it, but if you crest the hill, it's all blind there. And he's dropped the right side off the car. The left side never ends up off the racetrack, but that you can see a couple of pieces come out. That's probably the splitter. Bit of front body work there. Now this is another spin that he had earlier. Didn't touch anything, but that's over in the turn 4 area. And there was one quick one before that, and that's how he lost the lead.
Yeah, those two really dropped him behind the group that he was dealing with at the time, which included the number 7 sister machine here. Ralph Kellner's now leading, but you can see a little brake lock up there. Kellner's feeling the pressure, and Borchler, even with that most recent off where he ran a little wide, is still very quick here. And Bill Rand makes a decision that these guys are allowed to race. Don't take each other out, mind you, but you are free to race, and the SRP battle might be one of the best we've had this season. Back at Virginia International Raceway, the sports racing prototype battle continues to be superb at this point. You'll note, however, that it is now number 8, Terry Borchler, has gone around Ralph Kellners and has picked up the lead. And it really all started, Jeremy, with a slight mistake by Kellners up in the oak tree turn. We're going to go back and show you what happened.
Well, Borchler was the one that had made the mistakes earlier, but Kellners gets wide in the first part of the corner and then extra wide in the second part of the corner. You can see with that lockup, there's Borchler laying a couple of strips of rubber coming out from under the oak tree, and he translates that into a good shot down the straightaway, picks up a toe on the 7 car, and finishes off that pass pretty easily, actually.
You can see Kellners look over and just said, well, like I said, I can race him, but I don't want to take him out, so he let him go. Borchler actually opened it up a little bit. Now Kellners has responded, and Guy Hobbs, Ralph Kellners, has closed right back up, and these guys are separated by a car length.
Up and over with his teammate, Marino Franchitti. Marino quite some anxious moments here. Unfortunately, just lost the lead, but now Ralph putting some pressure back on.
I can't believe he's actually doing that. We've been fighting with the car all day. We're down on power in the engine. We were adding downforce to the front, changing the front bar. I mean, the car seems to be a little better now. But I mean, I made a mistake earlier, beached the car under the yellow, just lost it trying to put heat into the tires. And so it's been a tough day. I think Ralph's done a fantastic job. I just hope he can keep it up for the next few laps.
And there are no team orders here?
Absolutely none.
Well, there's about 12 laps to go, so keep your fingers crossed and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, Marino Franchitti.
All right, thanks very much, guy. Jeremy, I would ask you, do you think that in that pursuit after his problems, Terry was absolutely flogging that car brutally around here? You think maybe he just used up the tires?
Well, if that's the case, Kellners is, matching the flog level right now. So I think right now the two of them are pretty much, ooh, that hurt.
Yeah.
Because this Porsche will not be nearly as quick as Borchler up the hill here. So this could be an opportunity for Ralph Kellners if he can sneak it through here.
Oh, and he panicked. Porsche left it open for him, and Kellners wasn't confident and locked it up.
That is very surprising because he could have just followed his teammate right through that hole. So more hard work to be done now by Ralph Kellners if he's going to close up that gap. Very surprising.
Amazing. What was it, 2 laps ago? I looked up at the monitor. They had both turned 1 minute 47.00 second laps. That close were those two running. Now the question will be, will Kellners be able to close it up again? See what kind of speeds he's able to run at this stage compared to those of teammate Terry Borchler. And I really do wonder if Borchler maybe had used up a little bit of too much tire. And our GT leader is down in the pits. Guy Hobbs.
Bill Allman's brought it in, and they're cleaning out the front radiator, adding fuel, adding a bit more duct tape to that left door, which remember got broken earlier, not risking any kind of driver change because they can't get the door open, and he should be back out and underway very quickly. There he goes.
A very quick stop, and they came out. They had a lap lead when they made the stop, and it still looks pretty strong for the GT team, as it does for Andy Wallace up front overall. Welcome back to, dare I say, a sunny Virginia International Raceway, and heating up on the track too. The competition, SRP2, is a absolutely wonderful battle here, and it's an interesting one because other than the win, ooh, Kellner's a little bit of a bobble there. That's going to hurt him. Other than the win, there's not much on the line. Whether Borchler finishes first or second in the number 8 car, he's still going to really expand his point lead over the Picchio driver of Darren Law. So it doesn't matter if he's first or second in terms of the points. What's on the line now is a race win. And Marino Franchitti, we heard from him earlier, they'd love to get it here, and he absolutely vindicated the fact that there are no team orders, Jeremy. There's some great racing. We're expecting the white flag out now for Andy Wallace, who finds himself right now with a 30-second lead. He's been driving the gap. Didier Taze has been flying and closing it up a little bit, but I think Andy Wallace knows exactly what he's doing, what the margin is, and he's been driving to make sure he's got plenty of room to the finish.
And this will be a real accomplishment for this Crawford team, and a real accomplishment for Chris Dyson in terms of the points battle with Didier Tays, and I think both of these teams have had unforced errors here today, and either one of them could have won it. Certainly, we know that the Dorn team could have won this race, but very solid job by Andy Wallace. I really think Andy Wallace is the guy that's done the yeoman's work today, because he kept that car in contention early on and really did his best to hang on to the back of Didier Tays, and what a job he's done with this Crawford.
And has flown in some very quick laps when it was necessary, and that has propelled him, as you said, up into the lead. There's our SRP2 battle. In the GT division, by the way, the number 33 Ferrari ducked into the pits, just topped off. They've been having a little fuel pickup problem. They had a lap to play with, so not a problem there. All of their contenders have dropped by the wayside. In the American GT division, it's still the number 19 Applied Computer or Advanced Composite Products Corvette. Kerry Hitt, the points leader in that category, coming in, and they're still hanging on to the lead. Oh, and Marino, excuse me, that's Kellner's, and suddenly slowed.
He dropped the wheel coming out of the oak tree turn, and it took him a while to get back on the racetrack. So now look at that gap.
There it is, last lap, and Borchler, after Borchler had been the one off course a couple of times here, Kellner's, by dropping a wheel, may have ironically given it back to Terry Borchler, but what a drive. Meanwhile, Andy Wallace out of the final turn, the hog pen corner one last time, and for the first time in over 28 years, a professional sports car gets the checkered flag at Virginia International Raceway after a great run here. And as you said, Jeremy, just a superb effort by this Crawford team. In really here, the Dyson team not here. This has been run by Max Crawford, and they've orchestrated a very solid race here. You can see there's a lot of happy people down there. There's Chris himself, who of course is going to close in even more, not in huge chunks, but even more, 3 or 4 points he's making up on Didier Tays here as we get down near the end of this season. So a great run for those drivers. There you see the number 33 Ferrari. Even with that last stop, Jeremy has plenty of room in hand and is going to come around, damage and all. Boy, when they had problems, they had a race with problems, they still are able to pull out the win. Mojo's a beautiful thing.
4 in a row. What an accomplishment for those guys.
Here's the number 19. That's the car that is going to come down and pick up the win in AGT. Kerry Hitt, Doug Mills, and Owen Trinkler, the drivers there. They had a bit of a scare late in the going, ducked in to top up with fuel. Had a problem getting started, but a push start by the crew got them underway, and they're going to pick up the win in American GT. Today's Speed Channel coverage of the Rolex Sports Car Series has been brought to you by Porsche, what only a Porsche brings to driving. And by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Chris Dyson, Andy Wallace, what a superb drive. First win for the Crawford, the maiden victory. First time here at Virginia International Raceway, and a heck of a race, up and down all day. Well, at one point going down a lap, getting that lap back. Didier Tays and Mauro Bordi went down a lap, and they got their lap back, but just incredible. And being as Andy just did the last bit, we're getting away. Of course, we've really helped Chris in the points as well here. But Andy, a good decision to come here and race the Crawford.
Well, it's a fantastic race. I'm so happy for Max Crawford, Jan Crawford, and all the people at Crawford Composites. I'm very, very happy for Dyson Racing. Chris Dyson, great job, mate. You know, we had no clutch for the last 2 hours, and we got a hole in the splitter. So I was hanging on for dear life. Every single gear change, I nearly locked up the wheels and went off. Anyway, who cares? We won. I'm very, very happy.
Congratulations, Chris.
This is a fantastic track, by the way. We need to come here more often. VIR is fantastic.
All right, there you go. We talked about how good it was. Chris, you enjoyed this track too, right?
I don't know what to say. I'm just so happy for Andy and for everybody with the Crawford team, and this is just terrific. Just a great result.
He looks a lot happier to hear than he did at Watkins Glen a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, Guy, a little bit of a deer in the headlights look for Chris there. The first win for the Crawford brings him closer yet to Didier Tays in this championship battle. What a story it'll be if the rookie wins it. There is Borchler winning. He expands his lead in SRP. The number 33 Ferrari, 5th overall. Oberlin and Wagner stretching their margin in GT. And we go back to 10th overall. There you see Kerry Hitt and that Corvette. He came in with the points lead in AGT. He's going to open that up just a little bit. And as we look a little deeper in the points, you can see some of the major players with their problems finishing back in the order, and that all cost them. But a great run for the Ferrari, and Sandy standing by with the two drivers who got 6 straight.
Bill Oberlin, Court Wagner, outstanding run at the beginning. Before the race, you talked about staying with strategy. First, Court, I got to ask you about this, though. What is that? Whoa, what was that all about?
A little bit of damage. I hit oil, or I thought I actually had a suspension failure back at the oak tree, and turned in. The car just went straight as a line. I mean, it just right barriers. What do you hit?
Oh, yeah.
It hit a tire barrier. Hit oil, then a tire barrier. Something happened. I don't know the suspension, but you know, got to figure it out. And Bill jumped in and finished his race, and it was just a great event. Bill did a great job today, and the crew did a great job. Gerard Perregaux, Ferrari Washington, incredible event again.
Winning pretty isn't always the way to go. You won ugly, but you did it.
I don't know. You saw at the end, we were pitting every 10 laps or so because one of the transfer pumps probably in the tank went bad. So we were only getting half of the tank load. So if somebody was close, we would have been in trouble. I just want to say thanks to Gerard Perregaux, Ferrari of Washington, the crew for doing a great job. 4 in a row. That's unbelievable. And I'm happy. My fiance Yvette's here. Thank you.
They're on a roll, the Ferrari team. Let's go to Guy. Guy?
Terry Borchers in victory lane with his 2 children. And Terry, great day, but a very tough one.
I made it hard on myself, that's for sure. We had a really good lead. The guys did a phenomenal job, as always, with the pit stop, and I threw it off the first time I was back in. I was pretty wiped out after the double early on, and I probably should have let Anthony finish it up, but yeah, I made it hard.
All right, congratulations. You've also increased your points lead in the championship, too.
Yeah, we're real happy for that, and just, you know, real happy for all the people on board with recent competition, and K&N, the new support that I've got from them, it's been a big help and looks good for next year. So I'm just excited about extending the points championship.
I'll try and stop boshing your children over the head with the microphone. Well done, Terry.
What a wild ride in SRP2, and of course Bill Oberlin corrected me 4 straight for the Ferrari team. And let's go right back down to Victory Circle. Sandy standing by with our winners in AGT.
Kerry Hitt wins the AGT. Great run.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It was a great team effort. I'll tell you, the last couple of laps we had fuel pressure problems, and the guys were fueled it, and we came back in and we had to fuel it again, and then it wouldn't start, so they had to push it down. It was definitely a team effort, but it's great. I think getting married must have changed my life.
Oh, the very happy Kerry Hitt here winning that marathon session.
It was a great weekend here. Next up, another brand new circuit as historical and legendary, Canada's legendary Mont Tremblant. We'll see you there. Until then, take care, everybody.